Chapter 21. Intense Bidding. Although the soul returning pill was not the best third-grade medicinal pill, it was not something that an ordinary core formation realm cultivator could afford. Arliss reading Omicron N Beta OX Nouvelle. So The most crucial thing was that after a cultivator broke through to the true essence state, they would have the possibility of becoming an alchemist. Of course, there were also many cultivators who tried to refine medicinal pills in the chi transformation state, but all of them encountered a fatal shortcoming. The chi or spiritual power in their dantians was not enough to support the refining process of top-grade pills. Because of this, the pills refined by cultivators below the true essence realm would not reach the top grade. They could not fully refine the essence of the medicinal materials used at all. Only those who had stepped into the true essence realm or higher had enough spiritual power to refine the medicinal materials perfectly and turn them into a top-grade pill. In other words, the strength of an existence that could refine a top-grade medicinal pill was definitely no lower than the core formation state. Moreover, the cultivators of the Great Qian dynasty were extremely familiar with the name of the alchemist master Lin Song. Due to the alchemist's revered status, Lin Song enjoyed extremely favorable treatment among the various large factions. Lin Song's alchemy skills were incomparably exquisite. Any medicinal pill that he refined had a guaranteed quality. If not for the fact that Yi Zhan's internal injuries had been too severe back then, he would have been able to treat his internal injuries just by relying on the recovery pill. However, his injuries were too severe. His meridians had almost been completely severed, and even his internal organs were extremely damaged. Aside from that, he had also been poisoned. Sister, I didn't expect the auction house to really have a recovery pill. We can save Dad. At this moment, a young man garbed in green inside the auction house spoke to a slightly mature-looking lady beside him. There was also an old man similarly dressed in green standing in front of these two people. Unlike the wild joy evident on the young man's face, the elder sister's brows were tightly knitted together. Silly brother, this auction is not simple. That's right, I'm afraid we might not be able to obtain this soul-returning pill. The green-clothed elder said slowly. Why is this so? The youth had a puzzled expression on his face when he heard their words. Take a proper look at the situation, the elder said once again. At the same time, he sighed in his heart. He had not expected that this auction would attract the attention of so many factions. It seemed that it would be extremely difficult to heal the clan lord's injuries. The three of them were not from Zhaohe City, but from Zhongqing City, which was close to 500 kilometers away from Zhaohe. Their identities were not simple either. They were members of the strongest family in Zhongqing City, the Li family. The elder sister's name was Li Qingyan, and the younger brother's name was Li Chen. The two of them were direct descendants of the Li family, and also possessed the bloodline of the clan lord. The person who came with them this time was the second elder of the Li family. The reason why they attended this auction was because the soul-returning pill had appeared in this auction. Almost a month ago, the head of the Li family had gone deep into the dangerous mountains to hunt down demonic beasts. Although he eventually killed the demonic beasts, on the way back, he was ambushed by his enemies. However, the strength of the head of the Li family was not to be underestimated. Even though he was seriously injured, he killed all his enemies. The dantian in his body had been damaged, which seriously affected his cultivation foundation. After suffering such a serious injury, it would take him at least several years to recover. Most importantly, even if the injuries could be healed, because of his damaged cultivation foundation, his future as a cultivator was likely to stagnate. His cultivation state might even drop because of this. Due to this, the Li family had spent a lot on healing items. Unfortunately, none of these had worked to rectify the damage to the clan lord's dantian. If the head of the Li family's internal injuries could not be treated, then the enemies that the Li family had previously offended would definitely look for an opportunity to make a move. At that time, the only thing waiting for the Li family would be a disaster. Just when everyone was about to despair, they suddenly learned that a large-scale auction was about to be held in Zhaohe City. Moreover, they discovered that there was a healing recovery pill, the soul-returning pill, listed for auction. After learning this news, the second elder quickly rushed over with Li Qingyan and Li Chen. However, when they arrived at the auction house, they realized that the competition for the soul-returning pill in the auction house would be intense. From the looks of it, many factions had already set their sights on the soul-returning pill. I bid 30 million. The first person to bid was the vice commander of the Shadow Tower, Lin Yu. When everyone saw this, their hands that were originally planning to bid suddenly stopped, and their expressions turned a little ugly. They had not expected the Shadow Tower to actually take a fancy to the soul-returning pill. This was going to be troublesome. I bid 35 million. At this moment, Feng Yitai's voice slowly sounded. When the crowd saw this, their expressions changed once more. How the hell were they going to snatch it now? Two existences with such great strength had their eyes set on the soul-returning pill. These giants were not an existence that they could contend against. It was one thing for them to bid for the Violet Orchid earlier, but no one had expected them to have their eyes set on the soul-returning pill as well. Moreover, both of them looked determined to obtain it. Most importantly, Feng Yitai's manner of doing things was extremely overbearing. During the auction, that terrifying pressure once again spread out. Although that pressure did not directly attack anyone, the threat it implied was self-evident. The cultivators who originally wanted to bid for the soul-returning pill hesitated, but did not dare to speak out in anger. The evil blood sect's strength was too terrifying. If they offended Feng Yitai because of a soul-returning pill, although the other party would not make a move in the auction house, no one could guarantee that he would not once they were outside. Thinking this, the cultivators who originally desired the soul-returning pill gave up with a face full of unwillingness. When Feng Yitai saw this scene, he revealed a satisfied expression. With this, his only opponent would be Lin Yu. I bid 36 million. However, at this moment, a pleasant voice suddenly spoke up in the auction hall. When Feng Yitai saw this, his eyes turned cold. Killing intent flashed across his eyes. Did this person not understand the implied meaning he had previously expressed? There was actually someone who did not give face to the evil blood sect. This person was really courting death. When the crowd saw this, they could not help but reveal curious expressions. They looked towards the source of the voice. When they did, they caught sight of a young girl. The young girl who was bidding for the soul-returning pill was precisely Li Qingyun from Zhongqing City's Li family. After sensing that she had drawn the attention of the crowd, Li Qingyun could not help but grab the corner of her clothes with her small hands. Her face gradually turned pale. She had long heard of the terrifying reputation of the evil blood sect, so she naturally knew that this force was extremely powerful and was not to be trifled with. Most importantly, the most powerful existence of the evil blood sect had broken through to the early stages of the empty core stage. The evil blood sect was simply not a force that the Li family could afford to offend. However, Li Qingyun was also unwilling to give up. If she missed this opportunity, she was afraid that it would be difficult for her to encounter another soul-returning pill in the future. Her father's injury was so severe that treatment could not be delayed any longer. Otherwise, those who coveted the Li family's assets might not be able to hold themselves back anymore. Moreover, the clan lord was the strongest person in the Li family. If they lost his combat strength, the Li family would not be able to resist the invasion of the other forces. If conflict really broke out, then the Li family would face an unprecedented disaster. Moreover, there was a high possibility that they would be destroyed by the other forces. Chapter 22. This pill is yours. Due to this, even at the risk of offending the evil blood sect, Li Qingyun still decided to take a gamble. Arliss reading Omicron N Beta OX Nouvelle. So M. HMPH. Seeing this, Feng Yitai snorted coldly. The strength of a 10th level purple spirit stage cultivator instantly erupted, which then formed a terrifying pressure that enveloped Li Qingyun and the others. Not good. Seeing this, the second elder's face changed greatly. He hurriedly released the power in his body, protecting Li Qingyun and the others. Be careful. The very next second, the second elder's body suddenly trembled, and he let out a muffled snort. His face turned pale. However, no matter what, he still resisted Feng Yitai's pressure. Although his strength was only at the 4th level of the purple spirit stage, even a 10th level purple spirit realm cultivator would find it absolutely impossible to defeat him with just a wave of pressure. Feng Yitai's gaze turned even colder when he saw this scene, and his eyes were filled with monstrous killing intent. Of course, he did not make any excessive movements. After all, this was the auction house's territory. Most importantly, the strongest existence behind the auction houses was no lower than the empty core stage. On the surface, that person was an existence on the same level as the evil blood sect's commander. He was merely a 10th level purple spirit stage cultivator. How could he dare to act so presumptuously in front of the other party? Of course, his actions had already marginally broken the rules of the auction house. The reason why the auction house did not stop Feng Yitai's actions was because the strongest existence behind the auction house was acquainted with the commander of the evil blood sect. However, if Feng Yitai continued to be presumptuous, the other party would not sit idly by. It was precisely because Feng Yitai saw this that he did not make too much of a fuss. I bid 40 million. After Feng Yitai withdrew his pressure, he continued to bid indifferently, no longer paying attention to Li Qingyan and the others. He had already given them an obvious warning earlier. If the other party did not know what was good for them, then he could not be blamed for what followed. Sister, what should we do? Li Chen looked at his sister whose body was trembling and could not help but feel a little anxious. Although he had not seen much of the world, he had gained a clear view of the situation clearly now. The deputy commander of the evil blood sect was clearly determined to obtain the soul-returning pill. Moreover, he did not allow other cultivators to interfere in the bidding war between them and the Shadow Tower. Li Qingyan did not speak, but her body could not stop trembling. Her rosy cheeks turned extremely pale and her nails dug into her palm. Forget it, let's give up. The second elder could not help but shake his head helplessly when he saw this scene. Although the Li family's strength was not weak, it was nothing compared to the evil blood sect and the Shadow Tower. If they continued to bid, it was very likely that they would completely offend these two big factions. Inside the auction house, Feng Yitai would not make a move, but once they were outside, things would change. Li Qingyan did not answer, but her beautiful eyes were full of unwillingness. Power. If she had absolute power, she would be able to resolve this situation. Unfortunately, this world was a cruel one where only power was absolute. Seeing this, Yi Zan, who was sitting in the audience, raised his eyebrows and looked at Li Qingyan below in surprise. At the same time, several lines of virtual text appeared in his field of vision. Comprehension. 299. Bone. 79. Dual spirit physique. Innate affinity with both wood and fire attributes. Note. One can only fully activate the dual spirit physique after stepping into the true essence realm. Innately suited to be an alchemist, it can be said the owner of the dual spirit physique can achieve twice the result with half the effort when it comes to alchemy. Yi Zan became quite interested in this girl. With his true core state cultivation, he naturally was aware about everything that was going on inside the entire auction house. Faced with the threat of a 10th level purple spirit state cultivator, she was actually able to grit her teeth and persevere. Disregarding Li Qingyan's comprehension and innate bone values, just based on her mental toughness alone, she was a worthy candidate. She is indeed suitable to be taken in as a disciple, but I still have to observe carefully. Yi Zan said in his heart. In terms of comprehension, Li Qingyan could be said to have left you far behind. Her comprehension was dozens of points higher than Yu's, which made him feel extremely surprised. However, what made him most excited was that Li Qingyan actually had a natural wood and fire dual spirit physique, which was the most suitable physique for one to become an alchemist. Of course, Yi Zan would not directly take her as a disciple just because of this wood and fire dual spirit physique. After all, what he valued most in taking disciples was character. Even if he could not bid for the treasure that he was interested in today, it would still be pretty good if he managed to take in a disciple. At the same time, the bidding for the soul-returning pill became more and more intense. I bid 43 million. I bid 45 million. I bid 48 million. I bid 51 million. Although the bids were getting higher and higher, the only ones who were really competing were the evil blood sect and the Shadow Tower. After hearing Feng Yitai's last bid, Lin Yu's face changed greatly. Impossible. How can you still have 51 million? If you don't have the money with you, I'm afraid you won't be able to walk out of the auction house. Lin Yu said with a cold look in his eyes. It's just 51 million. Our evil blood sect can still afford such a small sum. Feng Yitai saw this and replied with a mocking look in his eyes. If he did not bring enough money, he would not have dared to participate in the auction for the Violet Orchid. I bid 53 million. Lin Yu called out another bid, but his expression was extremely ugly. Although the value of the soul-returning pill was not low, it was definitely not worth 53 million. However, for the sake of his commander's injuries, he had to continue bidding. I bid 55 million. Feng Yitai noticed his hesitation and responded indifferently. There was no trace of panic in his eyes, as if this 55 million was not a big sum. I bid 56 million. I bid 58 million. I bid 59 million. As more time passed, Lin Yu's expression gradually turned ugly. Feng Yitai had previously spent 30 million to bid for the Violet Orchid. Yet he actually still had sufficient funds to bid for the soul-returning pill. I bid 60 million. Feng Yitai's gaze remained indifferent as he announced a new bid. I bid 65 million. When Lin Yu saw this, he could not help but grit his teeth and immediately increased the bid by 5 million. I didn't expect your shadow tower to be so rich and overbearing. The soul returning pill is yours. At this moment, Feng Yitai revealed a smile on his face and said indifferently. Feng Yitai, what exactly does your evil blood sect mean by this? Lin Yu was furious when he saw this. He felt like he had been played like a fiddle. Chapter 23. Xingjian Grass. The effects of the soul returning pill were great, so there was no way that the evil blood sect did not want it. Arliss reading Omicron N Beta OX Nouvelle. So what exactly was this guy plotting? Feng Yitai might be arrogant, but he was just a boorish man. How could he have made such meticulous plans? Although he successfully bid for the soul returning pill, Lin Yu felt an ominous premonition. 65 million going once. 65 million going twice. 65 million going thrice. Congratulations to the vice commander of the Shadow Tower for successfully winning the bid for the soul returning pill. Once the female auction host dropped the hammer to close the bidding, the soul returning pill finally went to the Shadow Tower. Reality would prove that Lin Yu's premonition was accurate. Feng Yitai would never give up on the soul returning pill. He planned to mess with the Shadow Tower by raising the price of the item. As for how he would get the soul returning pill, it was very simple. He could just kill them and steal the goods. Once the men from the Shadow Tower left the auction house's territory, the assassins he prepared would immediately take action. Everyone, the auction is coming to an end. What we are auctioning next is the final treasure of today's auction. At this moment, the female auction host spoke slowly with a smile. This treasure is extremely special. To some cultivators, it is a priceless treasure, but to others it might also be a worthless weed. The treasure we are auctioning last is the Xingjian grass. As the female auction host concluded her words, Yi Zan's eyes lit up. He had not expected to encounter Xingjian grass in this auction. What a pleasant surprise. Our evil blood sect bid 60 million. Before Yi Zan spoke, Feng Yitai's voice rang out. I bid 65 million. Seeing this, Yi Zan first looked at Feng Yitai and then spoke faintly. Seeing this, Feng Yitai became furious. What was going on today? Why were there people competing with him for treasures everywhere? Was the evil blood sect's reputation worthless? Had they been too peaceful recently? 3. Reckless fellow, I will slaughter your entire family. In Feng Yitai's opinion, anyone who bid against him and hindered him from getting what he wanted was his enemy. Feng Yitai immediately searched for the source of the voice and discovered that the person who was bidding against him was actually a handsome young man. However, because the young man did not have any sense of presence, he had automatically ignored the latter when he exerted his pressure earlier. Although Yi Zan was very famous in the Great Qian dynasty, and most cultivators had heard of his fame, most people would not recognize his face. I bid 70 million. Feng Yitai looked at Yi Zan fiercely while slowly uttering those words. I bid 75 million. Yi Zan did not even look at Feng Yitai, as if these tens of millions of gold coins were nothing but pocket change. Damn it, are you trying to pick a fight? Feng Yitai flew into a rage. The moment he saw the Xingjian grass, he had decided to bid for it at all costs. Moreover, in his eyes, the value of the Xingjian grass far surpassed that of the violet orchid that he had bid for before. His cultivation had reached the 10th level of the purple spirit state 10 years ago. However, despite spending 10 years cultivating, he was still unable to surpass the bottleneck of the purple spirit state. Of course, this was not because his aptitude was ordinary, but rather because he had experienced an extremely special opportunity previously. 9 years ago, he had accidentally entered a mysterious ruin called the Sword Tomb. Not only that, he had also absorbed a mysterious sword chi into his dantian. Although that mysterious sword chi did not cause the slightest damage to his dantian, it emitted an invisible power that was fiercely suppressing the purple mansion in his dantian. It was precisely because of this reason that he had been stuck at the peak of the purple spirit state for 9 years. The purple spirit state was the next major state after a cultivator broke through to the true essence state. When a cultivator's state reached the peak of the true essence state, if they wanted to break through to the next state, they had to open up the purple mansion in their dantian. The purple mansion also had another title, which was a cultivator's second dantian. If a cultivator successfully opened up their purple mansion, the true essence power in their dantian would pour into their purple mansion, and then slowly transform into a higher level power, becoming the power of the purple spirit. The more purple spirit power there was in the purple mansion, the stronger the cultivator would be. In addition, the space within the purple mansion would expand as the cultivator broke through. When the space within the Purple Mansion reached its limit, the purple spirit power within the Purple Mansion would rapidly condense and fuse. When that happened, the cultivator's dantian would evolve into an empty core. This state was also known as the core formation state. If Feng Yitai wanted to step into the core formation state, he had to condense all the purple spirit power in his Purple Mansion, and then completely fuse it with his Purple Mansion. However, due to the mysterious sword chi's suppression, the purple spirit power in his Purple Mansion was unable to completely fuse with his Purple Mansion. Feng Yitai had tried countless methods to resolve this issue, but to no avail. Fortunately, the heavens did not disappoint those with good intentions. He had come across a method in a book. If a cultivator could consume the Xingjiang grass, they would be able to refine the mysterious sword chi in the Purple Mansion. After all, the Xingjiang grass contained an extremely special power which would be able to suppress and refine that mysterious sword chi. It was precisely because of this that Feng Yitai could be said to be constantly inquiring about the whereabouts of Xingjiang grass. However, even after spending 5 years, he still had not found any traces of it. Originally, he had been about to give up, but he did not expect to actually come across the Xingjiang grass in the auction. The information he obtained previously regarding this auction did not specify that it was auctioning Xingjiang grass today. It was obvious that this had been added by the auction house at the last minute. If he could refine the Xingjiang grass and eliminate the suppression of the mysterious sword chi on his Purple Mansion, he was certain that he could step into the core formation state by relying on his 10 years of cultivation accumulation at the peak of the purple spirit state. Once he truly stepped into the core formation state, he would become one of the most powerful cultivators in the Great Qian dynasty. To him, this was an irresistible temptation. Therefore, no matter what price he had to pay, he would never miss out on such an opportunity. 1. Moreover, in his opinion, the Xingjiang grass was far more important than the soul-returning pill. After all, even if he successfully won the bid for the soul-returning pill and healed the commander's injuries, he would still be the evil blood sect's deputy commander in the end. Facing a powerful core formation state cultivator, he would be nothing but a dog. Chapter 24. Don't be rash, you can't fight here. However, if he entered the core formation state, his position would be equivalent to that of the leader of the evil blood sect. Arliss reading Omicron N Beta OX Nouvelle. So M. By then, even if the leader of the evil blood sect perished, as long as he was around, who could do anything to the evil blood sect? He could even enjoy a respected position within the Great Qian dynasty. Therefore, given all these factors, when he discovered that there was someone else competing with him, he was naturally furious. There's going to be a good show. Feng Yitai seems to be really angry. That guy is ruthless. It seems that the young man is going to suffer. Although Feng Yitai doesn't dare to make a move with that expert in the auction house, it's hard to say if he won't after he leaves the auction house's territory. That's right. Did you see the killing intent in Feng Yitai's eyes? It seems that regardless of whether that young man wins the bid for the Star Sword Grass or not, he will suffer Feng Yitai's revenge. He's still a young man after all. His thoughts are too simple. He actually dared to provoke such a fierce existence like Feng Yitai. The cultivators in the auction house immediately started discussing the matter, but no one believed that Yizan would emerge from this unscathed. After all, in everyone's eyes, other than the expert behind the auction house, Feng Yitai and Lin Yu were the strongest cultivators present. Of course, this did not include core formation state cultivators, as they were already considered invincible existences. Most importantly, no one dared to offend the evil blood sect and the Shadow Tower in the Zhaohe city. It was due to this that everyone resisted the impulse to bid after being threatened by Feng Yitai. Although treasures were indeed quite tempting, they had to be alive to enjoy those treasures. As for Yizan, because he had used the breath concealment technique, no one could sense his cultivation unless the other party's cultivation level was much higher than his. Everyone present thought, how strong could a young man around the age of 20 be? Even some genius cultivators were only at the 9th level of the true essence realm. This guy wasn't like that, right? Yizan was an elder of the Qingyan clan. No one would think that he would come to such a lousy place. Therefore, in their eyes, the Yizan in front of them was like a dead man. I bid 76 million. I will be the owner of the Xingjiang grass. Feng Yitai suppressed the anger in his heart and said with a cold gaze. If he had not considered the existence behind the auction house, he would have moved to kill Yizan with one slap. 76,010,000. Yizan looked at Feng Yitai and spoke slowly with a smile. Are you angry? I'm going to anger you to death. FCK, Feng Yitai immediately became furious. This guy only added 10,000 gold coins to his bid. This was equivalent to blatant provocation, was it not? Who do you think you are? Feng Yitai could not hold it in anymore. The surging pressure in his body swept out and enveloped Yizan. Although the auction house did not allow fighting, he was only using his spiritual pressure. This did not violate the rules, right? Ha! Who do you think you are? How dare you act so arrogantly in front of me? At this moment, a pressure that was dozens of times stronger than Feng Yitai's swept out. It was as if the enormous Mount Tai had instantly emerged. Comparing the two, Feng Yitai's pressure was like a chicken, while Yizan's pressure was like a giant walking the mortal world. As long as the giant took a step forward, it would easily stomp the chicken to death. The pressure of a core formation state cultivator. This young man has actually broken through to the core formation state. At this moment, the expressions of many cultivators in the auction hall changed drastically. In the face of this incomparably terrifying pressure, they were like swaying blades of grass that were on the verge of collapsing under the howling thunderstorm. This terrifying pressure had definitely surpassed the purple spirit state. They never imagined that there would actually be a peerless expert whose strength had reached the core formation state in the auction hall. Feng Yitai had kicked a huge rock this time. This fellow was about to suffer. This thought popped up in everyone's minds at the same time, but their hearts did not pity him. Were you not incomparably arrogant earlier? Were you not threatening us openly? Were you not openly parading the evil blood sect status around? You have now offended an existence that you cannot afford to and have kicked an iron plate. Although 10th level purple spirit state cultivators were indeed extremely powerful in the Great Qian dynasty, they were still not strong enough to be considered among the ranks of top-tier cultivators. Only when one's cultivation level reached the core formation state could one gain an unassailable status within the Great Qian dynasty. The reason for that was simple. Once a core formation state cultivator made a move, they could easily crush a city and turn it into ruins. This is impossible. Feng Yitai's expression changed drastically when he saw this. His eyes were filled with shock. The other party was clearly a young kid with no reputation. How could he turn out to be a super powerhouse whose cultivation had reached the core formation state? Why would such a terrifying existence appear in Zhaohe City's auction? Most importantly, he sensed an extremely obvious killing intent within this terrifying pressure. You don't act recklessly. Cultivators are not allowed to make a move in the auction house. At that moment, Feng Yitai could not stop himself from shouting out in panic. His gaze went toward the depths of the auction hall. The powerhouse behind the auction house was sitting there. Even if this guy was a core formation state cultivator, he had to give face to the owner of the auction house, right? However, the very next second, Feng Yitai's body trembled. He realized that the owner of the auction house seemed to be ignoring him, and did not display the slightest reaction. Seeing this, Yizan could not help but faintly look in that direction, and then slowly said, "Are you going to make a move?" "My lord, please don't misunderstand. I don't have the right." As soon as he finished speaking, a respectful voice suddenly responded from the deepest corner of the auction house. He was the owner of the auction house. After sensing Yizan's terrifying spiritual pressure, his forehead was already covered in sweat, and he cursed inwardly. Damn Feng Yitai, I was almost implicated by him. Although they were both at the core formation state, he sensed that Yizan's pressure was unfathomable. The other party's cultivation was at least at the advanced stage of the empty core state. There was a high possibility that he had already stepped into the true core state. Faced such a terrifying existence, who dared to provoke him? If the other party was unhappy, he could just slap him in the auction house to death. Chapter 25. Lightning Sword. As soon as the words left his mouth, the entire hall fell into a state of deathly silence. One could even hear a pin drop. Arliss reading Omicron N Beta Ox Nouvelle. So everyone's pupils constricted abruptly. Their eyes were filled with shock, as if a bolt of lightning had exploded in their minds. After all, not only was that person who responded the owner of the auction, he was also one of the 3 strongest experts in Zhaohe City, a peerless expert whose cultivation had reached the early stage of the empty core state. Yet he had actually called that young man, sir. It even seemed like he was trying to curry favor with him. Did that not mean that this young man's cultivation had already reached an extremely terrifying stage? At the very least, he was at the late stage of the empty core state. Or, could it be that this fellow's strength had reached the true core state? When he thought of this, Feng Yitai's expression changed greatly. His heart was filled with despair, and his body could not help but tremble. If the young man had just been a middle-stage empty core state cultivator, that person's attitude would not have been so ingratiating, and would not have allowed the young man to break the rules he set. Run. He had to run quickly. Presently, escaping was the only thought running through Feng Yitai's mind. If the young man's cultivation had made the owner of the auction house so fearful, would it not be an easy matter for him to annihilate the evil blood sect? Instantly, a small sword suddenly appeared in Feng Yitai's right hand. This small sword was the treasure he had obtained in the sword tomb back then. It was also his strongest trump card. As long as he crushed the small sword, he would be able to fuse with the mysterious sword chi in his dantian and transform into a sharp longsword. His speed would increase several fold in that state. This was also his most precious item and trump card. Were it not for this moment of life and death, he would not have been willing to use it. Whether it was the violet orchid, the soul returning pill, or the Xingjian grass or this small sword, they were all insignificant compared to his life. He had to survive. Swish. Feng Yitai's body suddenly emitted a resplendent light, and then transformed into an incomparably sharp longsword, flying out of the auction house. Thanks to the augmentation of the mysterious sword chi, Feng Yitai's speed surpassed the limits of a purple spirit state cultivator, and had almost reached the speed of a middle-stage empty core state cultivator. The sword chi contained a terrifying power, and it immediately alarmed the other two core formation state cultivators in Zhaohe City. Within two splendid courtyards of Zhaohe City, two middle-aged men simultaneously raised their heads to look at the sharp sword chi that had burst forth from the auction house. This person's cultivation is only at the peak of the purple spirit state. He must have used some kind of trump card to have gained the speed of the middle stage of the empty core state cultivator, right? Such a trump card is quite rare. Even I might not be able to catch up to him. The two middle-aged men could not help but narrow their eyes slightly when they saw this scene. However, what made them quite puzzled was that the source of these power fluctuations was the auction house. From the looks of it, he seemed to be running away. Could it be that the fellow from the auction house had targeted him? Throughout the entire Zhaohe City, the only person who could force a peak purple spirit state cultivator to use his trump card to run away was the one in charge of the auction house. However, by the time countless experts were shocked by Feng Yitai's trump card, he had already passed through the entire city in an instant and arrived at the edge of Zhaohe City. The sharp sword chi on his body was tearing through the sky and rushing towards the dangerous mountain range. However, at this moment, a scene that shocked countless cultivators suddenly occurred. An incomparably resplendent divine sword suddenly appeared out of nowhere. In an instant, it pierced through countless layers of clouds. It contained terrifying lightning energy. It suddenly appeared above Feng Yitai. That divine sword was suffused with an incomparably terrifying amount of energy. The mere fluctuations from the sword almost tore Feng Yitai apart. Feng Yitai's expression changed drastically when he saw this, and a sense of impending doom arose in his heart. Following that, under the gaze of countless cultivators, the divine sword released a terrifying lightning energy. In an instant, it slashed toward Feng Yitai. "I'm unwilling to die like this." Accompanied by an incomparably desperate scream, Feng Yitai was instantly submerged by the surging lightning energy. Bang! At the same time, a deep pit that was dozens of meters deep appeared on the ground. The deep pit was still filled with sparks from the terrifying lightning energy. However, Feng Yitai's figure had long been disintegrated. How is this possible? When the other two empty core state cultivators saw this, their expressions changed drastically. Their gazes landed on the deep pit, and their eyes were filled with shock. Such terrifying power. This was beyond the power of an empty core state cultivator. Not only that, if it had been them who faced such a terrifying attack, even if they were lucky enough to survive, they would still be heavily injured. Most importantly, the lightning energy within the divine sword was extremely terrifying, yet the opponent had forcibly controlled the destructive power within an extremely small range. What did this mean? It meant that the opponent's control over his own strength had already reached an extremely terrifying level. Just where did this expert come from? His strength had probably reached the true core state, right? Of course, Zhaohe City had also seen true core realm cultivators before, but it had already been 5 or 6 years since one had appeared here. This lord is actually a true core state expert. Not only were the two middle-aged men shocked, but the one in the auction house was even more shocked. Previously, he only had some speculation about this, but now he could finally confirm that the seemingly nondescript young man's strength had already reached the terrifying true core state. Thinking this, he could not help but look at Yi Zhan with respect. That handsome face, Coupled with the fact that he was only 20 years old and had such terrifying strength, could it be that person? That did not seem quite right. The cultivation of that person from the Qingyan sect was only at the middle stage of the empty core state. No matter how monstrous his talent was, it was impossible for him to break through to the true core state at the age of 20, right? The auction house owner rubbed his chin in deep thought. At the same time, Lin Yu, who was not too far away, revealed an expression of lingering fear. Fortunately, he had not been as impulsive as Feng Yitai earlier. Otherwise, he would have been the one who would have died instead. The commander of the Evil Blood sect had already been heavily injured. Now that their deputy commander had fallen, it was basically over for them. How would they have the strength to continue fighting with the Shadow Tower? Power. This is the absolute power that I have always desired. Only absolute power can make all my enemies yield. Seeing this scene, Li Qingyan could not help but look at Yi Zan with bright eyes. This guy looked so young. He was probably only a few years older than her, right? However, this guy's strength was so terrifying. How did he do it? One had to know that the person in charge of the auction house had reached the empty core state, but when facing Yi Zan, he personally broke the rules that he had set. As expected, the strongest fist in the world reigned supreme. For a moment, many thoughts appeared in Li Qingyan's mind. If she also had such terrifying strength, would the Li family still need to worry about their enemies? No, it should be said, would those people even dare to be enemies with the Li family? Yi Zan's senses were very sharp, so he naturally noticed the change in Li Qingyan's expression. However, when his gaze fell on Li Qingyan's face, she lowered her head in extreme panic. Chapter 26. Hidden Constitution. Seeing this, Yi Zan smiled. Arliss reading Omicron N Beta OX Nouvelle. So M. However, at this moment, he had no intention of taking Li Qingyan as a disciple. After all, the most important thing now was to help you take revenge. It would not be too late to observe Li Qingyan after everything was settled. Before taking her in as a disciple, he had to understand more about Li Qingyan. Given Yi Zan's current identity, he naturally did not need to personally inquire about Li Qingyan's background. He could just ask you to do it. However, just as Yi Zan was about to instruct you to go and inquire, Huang Ling and Shui Min beside him volunteered. They had always admired Yi Zan greatly and, after witnessing Yi Zan's terrifying strength earlier, they could not help but revere him more, especially when they heard Yi Zan say, "Who do you think you are? How dare you be so arrogant in front of me?" to Feng Yitai earlier. For a moment, the two girls were overjoyed, and immediately secretly vowed to stay in his good graces. He had an invincible demeanor, domineering words and absolute power. He directly crushed all the cultivators in the auction house. Even the previously incomparably arrogant Feng Yitai was forced to run away with his tail between his legs. Most importantly, the owner of the auction house, an expert whose cultivation had reached the early stage of the empty core state, did not dare to voice any objections. The two girls often went out to train and had met many talented cultivators, but compared to Yi Zan, the difference was like heaven and earth. They really did not know whether the young cultivators of the great Qian dynasty should feel sad or honored to have been born in the same era as Yi Zan. Seeing the two girls volunteer, Yi Zan thought for a bit and finally agreed. Now that he had bought the Xingjiang grass, he could bring you back to the inn to activate her sword jade physique. Thus, after Huang Ling and Shui Min set off, Yi Zan brought you back to the inn. At the same time, Huang Ling and Shui Min also found Li Qingyan and the others and stated their intentions for looking for them. When they learned of Huang Ling and Shui Min's identity, the second elder immediately warmly welcomed them. He also answered their questions in great detail. After sending them off later, the second elder frowned. Their questions had been extremely simple. Most of the questions had revolved around their origins. Why would a terrifying top-tier expert like Yi Zan ask for such simple information? What was the meaning behind it? Then again, how could a person like him guess the thoughts of a super expert? Thinking this, the second elder stopped thinking. After all, no matter what Yi Zan's thoughts were, or what impact it would have on the Li family, the matter was entirely out of his control. Could the elder Yi those two spoke of refer to that man? And that person was so handsome, and so terrifyingly strong too, could it really be him? Li Qingyan looked at the retreating figures of Huang Ling and Shui Min as they left, and could not help but raise her head to glance at the second elder. It should be, the second elder thought for a moment and then said slowly. Considering the young man's terrifying strength and handsome face, in the entire great Qian dynasty, only Yi Zan matched such a description. After all, that guy was the strongest genius of the Qingyan sect in the past 1,000 years. His cultivation had also reached the top echelons within the Great Qian dynasty. Earlier, Yi Zan and Yu had also returned to the inn. Yu, do you know why I took you in? Yi Zan's gaze fell on Yu as he asked. During the journey, Yu's mood had been a little depressed. Of course, Yi Zan knew very well that this was because Yu was about to return to her hometown. Her mind likely recalled the massacre in the village back then, which brought back memories of grief and sadness. Your disciple lacks insight. Please tell me. Hearing his question, Yu was stunned. She did not think that her teacher would ask her such a question. However, this was indeed a big question that she had kept hidden in her heart. Why would Yi Zan take her as his disciple? She did not possess monstrous talent nor a strong background. Why did he take a fancy to her amidst the many other disciples in the sect? Could it be that her hard work had really moved her master? Of course, Yu did not think about her beauty. She was indeed stunningly beautiful, but with Yi Zan's strength and status, it would not be hard for him to find a more beautiful and attractive person. Moreover, as long as Yi Zan was willing, there were countless beautiful women in the Great Qian dynasty who were willing to become his Dao partner. After all, Yi Zan was the youngest elder of the Qingyan sect at around the age of 20. His cultivation had even reached the core formation realm. As an additional plus point, he had an extremely handsome face. Which woman would not be tempted? Girl, I guess you've always felt that your aptitude was very poor, right? Yi Zan asked. Are they not? Hearing this, Yu became even more confused. If her aptitude had been monstrous, how could she have only been a handyman disciple of the Qingyan sect? How could she have trained so hard every day and only managed to reach the 4th level of the refinement state despite having cultivated for several years? Your aptitude isn't bad. It is actually higher than most cultivators. You should know that the aptitude of cultivators is divided into comprehension value and innate bone value. The comprehension value represents the level of a cultivator's comprehension of martial arts and techniques, while the innate bone value represents the cultivation speed of the cultivator's body. In the eyes of most cultivators, the so-called aptitude value refers to the innate bone value. If your cultivation speed far surpasses that of ordinary people, you will certainly be regarded as a genius cultivator with excellent aptitude in the eyes of others. However, most cultivators tend to overlook the more important, comprehension value. Comprehension value is not visible from the very beginning. Only when a cultivator's strength reaches a certain level can they truly unleash the potential of their own comprehension value. Although your aptitude value appears ordinary, your comprehension value is much higher than that of the sect master of the Qingyan sect and the various elders. What? When Yu heard this, she could not help but open her cherry-like mouth. Her eyes were filled with disbelief. Was her comprehension value as high as her master said? As for why your innate bone value is so ordinary, actually, it is due to some special reasons. In the case of cultivators, there are a very small number of cultivators who are born with special constitutions. Different constitutions have different effects. However, all of them represent top-grade innate bone value. However, the constitutions of cultivators are divided into overt and covert constitutions. Overt constitutions will be revealed when they are born, while covert constitutions need to be activated through special means. Most cultivators have overt constitutions, while your constitution happens to be one of the rarely seen covert constitutions. Your constitution is known as the sword jade physique. This constitution provides its owner with a special affinity with sword techniques. And the method to completely awaken the sword jade physique is very simple. You just need to completely absorb the power of the Xingjiang grass. As soon as he finished speaking, Yi Zan waved his sleeve. The Xingjiang grass that he had bought from the auction suddenly appeared in front of Yu. Its leaves were as thin as cicada wings, almost like sword chi itself. The most peculiar thing was that its leaves were dotted with star-like patterns. Teacher, seeing this, Yu's eyes immediately reddened, and her entire voice was choked with sobs. She had been wondering why her teacher would bid for the Xingjiang grass. It turned out that it was in order to activate her constitution. Chapter 27. Sword Jade Physique Activated, Stunning Beauty. 4. Sit cross-legged and adjust your spiritual power to its peak state. I will help you awaken the Sword Jade Physique in your body. Yi Zan said with a smile. Arliss reading Omicron N Beta Ox Nouvelle. So Yes, Master. Yu nodded obediently, and then sat down cross-legged and slowly adjusted her spiritual power. At the same time, Yi Zan stretched out his hand and gently pointed toward the Xingjiang grass. The terrifying power of his true core state cultivation gushed out and enveloped the Xingjiang grass in an instant, instantly removing all of the impurities and dregs within. 1. Yi Zhan already had a plan for how to deal with the Xingjiang grass. There were two methods. By directly gifting it to you, Yi Zhan could simply receive a reward from the system's feedback function. However, in this way, the item obtained would definitely be a heavenly treasure related to activating one's physique. Although such a heavenly treasure was rare, it was not of much use to Yi Zhan. Therefore, Yi Zhan decisively chose to use the second method. He directly helped you to completely awaken her hidden sword jade physique. As he had participated in the entire process of activating her sword jade physique, the reward that he would receive from the system's feedback function would definitely be a certain type of physique. Of course, he was uncertain as to what kind of surprise the system would give him. Not long after, as he refined it using that incomparably powerful energy, the Xingjiang grass transformed into an extremely pure form of heaven and earth energy, which then slowly poured into Yu's body. This special energy was not particularly useful to the cultivation of a cultivator. Similarly, it would not have a healing or detoxifying effect. Due to the special nature of the Xingjiang grass, it would only dissolve sword qi in a cultivator's body or awaken a constitution related to sword qi. When this special power entered Yu's body, her body suddenly emitted a dazzling light. Her skin, organs, meridians, and flesh all over her body were like grass that had just sprouted from beneath the ground, greedily absorbing this special power. At the same time, Yu fell into an inexplicable state. She vaguely felt that something in her body was about to awaken. Under Yi Zhan's guidance, the special energy transformed into countless small streams, which merged themselves into Yu's body. Previously, Yi Zhan had infused Yu with his spiritual power, allowing her to break through to the 9th level of the Qi transformation state. However, this was not limited to a simple breakthrough. It had also increased the strength of Yu's body to a terrifying level. As she absorbed this special energy, the sword jade physique that had been lying dormant in Yu's body began to slowly wake up. Her meridians were emitting strands of extremely special energy. At the same time, Yu felt a warm current slowly strengthening her body at an extremely rapid speed. Within a short period of time, Yu's originally fair and tender skin became even more so. However, the surface of this tender skin actually now contained astonishing defensive strength. The cells in her body were filled with vitality, the power of life was coursing through her body endlessly. Of course, the biggest change was in the bones in her body. Affected by that special energy, Yu's bones gradually became jade-like. If one were to inspect it with one's spiritual sense, it would look like a perfect piece of art. 1. Most importantly, hidden within these jade-like bones was an extremely sharp sword qi. Almost done. 15 minutes passed quickly. Yu's aura had undergone an earth-shattering change, like a divine sword that was about to awaken. Most importantly, the awakening of the sword jade physique not only strengthened Yu's body, but also filled her dantian with the special energy. With a cracking sound, Yu directly stepped into the 10th level of the Qi transformation state. However, it did not end there. The spiritual power in Yu's dantian and meridians began to compress at an extremely fast speed. Not long after, the originally abundant spiritual power in her dantian transformed into extremely pure liquid. This was the true essence that only true essence state cultivators possessed. The transformation of spiritual power into true essence represented a qualitative change. At the same time, it also meant that you had stepped into the true essence state. However, the surprises brought about by the awakening of the sword jade physique were far from over. The liquid true essence once again surged up, transforming into a powerful force that crazily boosted her cultivation. First level of the true essence state. Second level of the true essence state. Third, fourth, and finally the 5th level of the true essence state. After Yu stepped into the 5th level of the true essence state, the surging true essence in her body finally calmed down. At this moment, the sword jade physique in her body had finally been completely activated. Whoosh! In an instant, with Yu at the center, an invisible gust of wind suddenly swept out over the surroundings. The special energy in her jade-like bones became even more dazzling, expelling the impurities in Yu's body. At the same time, Yu's temperament also underwent a huge change. If Yu had been a beautiful young girl in her prime before, then Yu was now a celestial maiden from the heavens who had descended to the mortal world, untainted by the filth of the mortal world. Her peerless beauty, beautiful star-like eyes, jade-like skin, and a smile that moved one's heart, she could truly be said to be a beauty that could topple kingdoms and cities. 2. Seeing this, Yi Zhan became absent-minded. Master. Yu's small cherry mouth opened slightly, and a pleasant voice could be heard. Her beautiful eyes were filled with mirth. She had already noticed the changes in her cultivation. She was now a bona fide 5th-level true essence state cultivator. Who would have imagined that, 10 days ago, she had only been a mere 4th-level refinement state cultivator? 1. Ahem. Hearing this, Yi Zan quickly came back to his senses and then smiled in satisfaction. Very good. Of course, no one knew whether Yi Zan was referring to Yu's appearance or her cultivation. At this moment, several lines of virtual text appeared in front of Yi Zan's eyes again, which displayed information about Yu. Comprehension. 234. Innate bone value. 229. Sword Jade physique. A rare physique that is naturally compatible with Sword Dao. Its owner's bones are like fine jade. When this physique is cultivated to the great success stage, the owner can cultivate the most powerful sword chi in the world. I didn't expect her innate bone value to rise this much. Seeing this, Yi Zan was surprised. Ding. As the host has helped his disciple to awaken the Sword Jade physique, a random 32 times feedback critical hit has been obtained. Congratulations, the host has obtained the Sword Overlord physique. 3. At this moment, a system notification suddenly rang out in Yi Zan's mind. Rumble. At the same time, an extremely terrifying power suddenly gushed out of Yi Zan's body. It contained an extremely tyrannical aura, as if it was trying to tear the world apart. 1. Master, what happened? Seeing this, Yu could not help but turn pale with fright, because that incomparably tyrannical power not only tore through space, but also swept toward her. Chapter 28. Super Explosive Strike, Sword Overlord Physique. Even though Yu had already awakened the Sword Jade physique, she still felt pressured by this incomparably tyrannical power. Arlise reading Omicron N Beta OX Nouvelle. So M. HMPH. Seeing this, Yi Zan snorted coldly. He reached out with his hand and lightly grabbed it. The tyrannical power that had gushed out suddenly disappeared. What tyrannical power? Seeing this scene, Yi Zan's eyes narrowed. If he had hesitated just now, this tyrannical power would have turned the yin into dust in an instant. Sword Overlord Physique. The divine physique of the sword that possesses the most tyrannical power. It contains the power to destroy everything. When this physique reaches perfection, it can destroy everything. 1. Teacher, what was that just now? Yu's gaze fell on Yi Zan. Her eyes were filled with shock. If she had not seen incorrectly, her teacher seemed to have become stronger. Most importantly, the Sword Jade physique in her body even seemed to be trembling. Could it be that her teacher had also awakened some kind of powerful physique? I helped you awaken the Sword Jade physique just now and had an epiphany. That was the sword intent that I comprehended. Yi Zan found an excuse. He had indeed comprehended the sword intent, but it was not due to his own talent. It had been derived from the Sword Overlord physique itself. The Sword Overlord physique he had obtained from the system was so overbearing that it directly allowed him to comprehend 2 levels of sword intent. The so-called sword intent was a concept that evolved after one had accumulated sufficient comprehension on the path of Sword Dao. Moreover, sword intent long surpassed the boundaries of ordinary spiritual power and involved the power of the laws. Of course, other than sword chi transforming into sword intent, there were also many other similar concepts in this world, such as saber intent and fist intent. However, no matter what kind of concept it was, it would greatly increase a cultivator's strength. At the same time, concepts were also extremely difficult to comprehend. Only cultivators with monstrous talent had a certain chance of comprehending one. At lower cultivation levels, the higher a cultivator's innate bone value was, the faster their cultivation speed would be, which would result in a rapid increase in strength. However, when a cultivator's cultivation reached a certain level, the importance shifted to the cultivator's comprehension value. Those freaks with high comprehension values had a very high chance of comprehending concepts. Once they could comprehend a concept, the cultivator's strength would greatly increase. In other words, the starting point of a cultivator was determined by their innate bone value, but the end point of a cultivator was determined by their comprehension value. Concepts were also divided into 9 levels. Once the concept reached the 9th level, it was possible to comprehend the legendary profound power. Of course, Yi Zan had only just come into contact with sword intent. Profound power was still a distant dream for him. He had only comprehended 2 levels of sword intent, yet his strength had already reached a terrifying level. It was enough to envision how powerful profound power would be. However, after awakening the Sword Overlord physique, not only did Yi Zan possess 2 levels of sword intent, his cultivation had also broken through to the true core state. 1. The current him was already at the early stage of the golden core state. Throughout the entire Great Qian dynasty, cultivators whose cultivation had reached the golden core state were all old monsters from the various major factions. The number of these cultivators could be counted on one hand. If the previous Yizan could only run amok within the Great Qian dynasty, then the current Yizan could be said to have reached the point where he looked down on everything here. The strength of an early-stage golden core state cultivator, in addition to the sword defense lightning technique, low-rank earth rank, the cold light ice soul sword, low-rank magic weapon, the sword overlord physique, and 2 levels of sword intent. Yizan could even take on cultivators at the middle stage of the golden core state. Even if he faced stronger cultivators at the late stage of the golden core state, he still had the strength to fight. Today could be said to be a good day. The strength of both the master and disciple had greatly increased. When Huangling and Shui Min rushed back to the inn, they were instantly stunned when they saw the changes in the two people. She is too beautiful. When their gazes fell on Yu, their mouths were agape. They could not tear their eyes away from her, and their pupils were filled with astonishment. Yu's facial features did not change, but her beauty had undergone an earth-shattering improvement. Most importantly, Yu's temperament was now akin to that of a fairy from the heavens. Other than that, Yu's aura had also become incomparably sharp, like a divine sword that was about to be unsheathed. The powerful waves of spiritual power that gushed out also indicated that she had already stepped into the true essence state. Of course, there were also great changes in Yizan's body. Yizan, who was already extremely powerful, had become even more unfathomable in the eyes of Huangling and Shui Min. His aura was like a deep abyss that had no end. He was merely sitting there, but he somehow seemed like a divine sword that was about to tear the world apart, filled with incomparably tyrannical power. What is going on? The two looked at each other in confusion and saw the shock in each other's eyes. How long had they been gone? It had only been 15 minutes since they came back from gathering information. Why did they feel like there had been earth-shattering changes in these two? This was especially true regarding Yizan, who was unconsciously emitting an aura that made them feel oppressed. How could they dare to ask anything? What are the results of your investigation? Who is that woman? Yizan looked at Huangling and Shui Min, and then asked slowly. At the same time, the overbearing aura slowly disappeared. Huangling and Shui Min's expressions became much more relaxed. They came back to their senses and quickly told him about the information they had gathered in detail. Li family, Zhongqing City. Hearing this, Yizan could not help but raise his eyebrows. It seemed that after he helped you take revenge, he would have to go to Zhongqing City. Cultivators with dual spirit physiques were rare to begin with. If the other party's character was good, Yizan would not mind taking her in as a disciple. Huangling, Shui Min, if you two have nothing to do, you can practice swordsmanship with you. Of course, as your reward, I will help you refine that. Just as the two were about to leave after reporting their findings, Yizan stopped the two girls. Although Yu's cultivation was not low, she did not have much actual combat experience. If she did not go through some training, she would not be able to unleash her full strength. As you command, Elder. Hearing this, the two girls agreed without any hesitation. It was very easy to practice swordsmanship. The two of them often went out to train, so they had a lot of combat experience. Although they noticed that Yu had already reached the true essence state, they did not care too much about it. No matter how they looked at it, this deal was extremely worth it. Chapter 29. 2 against 1, and they still couldn't win. The dark glacial frost was extremely rare. Although it could increase a cultivator's innate bone value, it needed to be refined to do so. Arliss reading Omicron N Beta OX Nouvelle. So unless one possessed a certain amount of strength, even if they had the dark glacial frost, they could only watch it rot. Most importantly, it could not be refined with spiritual power at all. It required true essence energy or above to refine. Although it was true that one could refine the dark glacial frost after reaching the true essence state, it would take a lot of time. In other words, if Huangling and Shui Min were to refine the dark glacial frost, it would take them at least a few months. However, if there was an expert to help them refine it, they would then have more time to cultivate. Their initial idea was to ask their teacher, Lin Qing, for help when they returned to the Qingyan sect. With the help of an empty core state cultivator, it would only take a few hours to refine the dark glacial frost. However, Yizan's strength was obviously stronger than their teacher's. With his help, it would naturally be even faster. Moreover, the deal Yi Zan proposed was simply too easy to satisfy. If it's good, then you can start now. Yi Zan smiled, and then waved his sleeve. An invisible power enveloped you and the others, and they disappeared from the inn. When you and the others regained their vision, they found that they had already arrived in the wilderness outside Zhaohe City. Although it was late at night, it did not affect their vision at all. What terrifying speed! Seeing this, Huangling and Shui Min could not help but stare blankly. What level had Elder Yi reached exactly? This was definitely not something an empty core state cultivator could do, right? Oh right, when you fight each other, don't hold back at all. Don't worry about hurting each other. Just do your best, Yi Zan said. Now that his strength had reached the early stage of the golden core state, even if these three true essence state cultivators were to fight to the death, everything would still be under his control. Okay, the three of them nodded in unison. Yu's expression instantly turned serious. She indeed lacked practical combat experience, and she knew very well that her teacher was trying to train her in this regard. She absolutely could not miss this opportunity. She had to give it her all. Shui Min, you go first, Yi Zan said after thinking for a moment. As you command, Elder Yi. Shui Min nodded, and then a sword appeared in her right hand. She strolled leisurely toward Yu. As the personal disciple of an elder of the Qingyan sect, she often went out to train. It could be said that she had extremely rich practical combat experience. She was considered extremely powerful among cultivators of the same level. Those cultivators with ordinary levels of talent, even if their cultivation levels were slightly higher than hers, would not be a match for her. Not to mention the fact that she was currently facing a junior sister who had basically never experienced actual combat. However, the very next second, Shui Min's expression suddenly changed. Wang. The power in Yu's body quickly started to circulate, and her fifth-level true essence state cultivation suddenly exploded forth. What? Yu is actually at the fifth level of the true essence state. Seeing this, Huangling and Shui Min's expressions changed drastically. They had noticed that Yu had entered the true essence state since she had not yet familiarized herself with her own power back then, which made it impossible for her to completely hide her spiritual power fluctuations. However, Yu still managed to conceal a part of it. Thus, from what the two girls could sense, Yu had just entered the true essence state. Now that Yu had completely unleashed her strength, they finally understood Yu's true cultivation level. Fifth level true essence state. She was at the same level as Huangling, and her cultivation level was even higher than Shui Min's. At that moment, Shui Min's expression immediately turned serious. Senior sister, please advise, Yu shouted, and then she charged toward Shui Min. Seeing this, Shui Min did not dare to be the slightest bit negligent. The true essence in her body swept out without holding anything back. Within a short period of time, the two had exchanged close to 40 moves. Initially, Shui Min relied on her rich combat experience to gain a slight advantage, but, as time passed, she gradually became exhausted. Moreover, what surprised Shui Min the most was that Yu's combat experience grew extremely quickly, and soon the latter had an absolute advantage in the battle. Seeing that Shui Min was about to be unable to withstand Yu's attacks, Huangling hurriedly joined the battle. The two of them had always been training together in the outside world, and their coordination was impeccable. This turned the tides of the situation in an instant. Yu was once again at a disadvantage. However, it was extremely difficult for the two of them to fight Yu. As time slowly passed, who knew how many moves the three of them had exchanged? However, at this moment, another scene that caused Huangling and Shui Min's expressions to change greatly appeared. After Yu gradually adapted to Huangling and Shui Min's attacks, the sword jade physique in her body emitted a sharp light. The sword techniques she displayed swept across the sky. In an instant, she actually defeated Huangling and Shui Min. Alright, let's call it a day. Seeing this, Yi Zan got them to stop. Whoosh. Seeing this, Huangling and Shui Min could not help but hold their breaths in astonishment. They looked at Yu with shock in their eyes. The level of talent this master and disciple pair had was too abnormal. Previously, they had been jealous of Yu's luck in managing to become Elder Yi's disciple. However, after the battle just now, the jealousy in their hearts faded away. Yu's comprehension value had already reached an extremely terrifying level. Had it not, it would have been impossible for her actual combat experience to have increased so quickly. However, if the two girls knew that Yi Zan had once infused Yu with his own spiritual power, they might have once again become jealous. There was nothing strange about that though. This kind of treatment for disciples was simply too extravagant. Yizan once again waved his sleeve and brought Yu and the others back to the inn. He had already promised to help Huangling and Shui Min refine the dark glacial frost, so he naturally would not go back on his word. At first, Huangling and Shui Min thought that it would take at least several hours for Yizan to refine the dark glacial frost, but he did it in less than 15 minutes. They were completely dumbfounded. Ever since they started following Elder Yi back then in the mountain range, more and more things had happened along the way. They were almost numb to all the surprises that appeared. As everyone knew, the speed at which a cultivator refined the dark glacial frost was closely related to their strength. In other words, the stronger the cultivator, the faster they would be able to refine the dark glacial frost. Seeing that Yizan did not even need 15 minutes to refine the dark glacial frost in front of them, they wondered just how strong he was. The two looked at each other and saw the shock that was evident in each other's eyes. If their guess was correct, something that would shake the entire Great Qian dynasty might happen soon. After refining the dark glacial frost, Yizan waved his hand gently. Two cold streams of light instantly entered the backs of Huangling and Shui Min. At the same time, the power inside Yizan's body suddenly swept out, helping the two to completely absorb the dark glacial frost. Chapter 30. Yunhai City. Seeing this, Huangling and Shui Min were moved. Arlise reading Omicron N Beta OX Nouvelle. So was this the legendary VIP treatment? Although they could only experience it once, they were satisfied. With Yizan's help, they could be said to have refined the dark glacial frost perfectly. Moreover, after completely refining the dark glacial frost, they could clearly sense that their innate bone value had increased a little. Huangling and Shui Min then said goodbye to Yizan and joyfully returned to their respective rooms. Although the battle with Yu today had given them quite a blow, it was still worth their while since they were able to perfectly absorb the dark glacial frost with the help of Elder Yizan. I really hope that I can dream of Elder Yi tonight. The two girls lay on the bed. When they thought of Yizan's handsome appearance, they felt butterflies in their stomach. If Lin Qing knew that her two treasured disciples were having such thoughts, she would definitely hold her head in her hands helplessly and say, "It's really hard to discipline girls when they're older." On the morning of the third day, when the first wisp of purple air slowly rose in the east, Yizan took Yu and the others on the Firebird and flew toward Yunnan province. As they gradually approached the village in her memory, Yu's mood also turned gloomy. The joy that she had from her cultivation breakthrough had long disappeared. Time flew by and, soon, a day had passed. When night fell, Yizan brought them to find a place to rest. At the same time, Yizan once again honed Yu's actual combat experience, but this time, he became her sparring partner. Of course, he suppressed his cultivation to the 5th level of the true essence state. Even so, Yu could not last more than a few rounds in his hands. Ding. As the host has accompanied your disciple through 3 actual battles, you have helped your disciple obtain substantial actual combat experience. You have received a random 9 times feedback points critical hit. Congratulations, the host has obtained the experience of 27 life and death battles. 2. When the sparring ended, the system notification rang out in Yizan's mind. The next second, he gained the experience of 27 life and death battles out of thin air in his mind. He had gained quite a bit of understanding regarding the path of cultivation once again. As expected, everything can be improved. Seeing this, Yizan could not help but smile. Soon, the second day arrived. Yizan and the others once again passed through the mountains and forests. At noon, they finally arrived in Yunnan province. As long as they passed through the Netherworld forest, which was not far away, they would be able to reach Yu's hometown, which was the village filled with her sad memories, Linshi village in the east of Yunhai City. However, the Netherworld forest was extremely dangerous, and there were 5th-rank demon beasts inside, which were comparable to core formation state cultivators. Most cultivators did not dare to venture deep into the Netherworld forest, much less fly above it like Yizan. However, Yizan only released a bit of his aura. The 5th-rank demon beasts in the Netherworld forest immediately trembled uncontrollably and crawled on the ground in fear. The Firebird did not go straight to Linshi village. Instead, it landed in the nearby Yunhai city. In Yu's memory, she could only vaguely remember the appearances of the bandits. However, she did not know the exact origin of that group, nor did she know where their headquarters were. Therefore, Yizan planned to ask around for some information in Yunhai city first. The city lord of Yunhai city had reached the 7th level of the purple spirit state. As soon as he sensed the aura of the Firebird, he was shocked. The Firebird's grade was high level rank 4, and its strength was not inferior to his at all. If its owner was able to control such a terrifying demon beast, then the strength of its owner could only be greater. The city lord of Yunhai City hurriedly went out to welcome them with a smile. No matter what the other party's purpose was, he could not afford to offend this big shot, especially if he was some sort of eccentric powerhouse. The slightest dissatisfaction meant that the other party might even destroy this city. May I know where you come from? I am Lin Yuan, the city lord of Yunhai City. Greetings, sir. Lin Yuan bowed respectfully in the direction of the Firebird. Qingyan sect, Yi Zan. Yi Zan looked at Lin Yuan and then said calmly. At the same time, the Firebird turned into a stream of light and entered the space between Yu's eyebrows. I didn't expect it to be Elder Yi Zan. I have long heard of your illustrious name. Please come to the city lord's mansion for a visit. I will treat you well. Hearing his introduction, Lin Yuan was shocked. He had been wondering why this expert was so young. It turned out that he was Yi Zan from the Qingyan sect. In the entire Great Qian dynasty, there was no one who did not know Yi Zan's name. He did not expect this legendary big shot to turn up at Yunhai City. Why would such a noble existence come to such a remote place? I won't trouble the city lord. I came to Yunhai City just to gather some information. Yi Zan said. Elder Yi Zan, please tell me what information you are looking for. I will tell you everything I know, Lin Yuan said respectfully. I want to know the specific information of all the robbers at the border of Yunhai City. Yi Zan said. Seeing this, Lin Yuan's expression changed. Why, is that not possible? Seeing this, Yi Zan squinted his eyes. As the city lord of Yunhai City, it was impossible for Lin Yuan to know nothing about the bandits around Yunhai City. If the bandits in the city were too rampant and affected the lives of the common people to a great extent, he, as the city lord of Yunhai City, would certainly be punished by the Great Qian dynasty. Although Yi Zan's expression did not change much, Lin Yuan felt an extremely terrifying pressure, and cold sweat ran down his back. I do know some information, but it's basically information from 3 years ago. 3 years ago, the cultivation practitioners of the Xuanian sect came to Yunhai City and took over the mission of exterminating the bandits in the city. Therefore, the city lord's mansion ceased their involvement in the capture and extermination of the bandits after that. Lin Yuan explained hurriedly. The Xuanian sect was the second most powerful sect in the Great Qian dynasty. They had the authority to take over the mission of exterminating the bandits in the city by using the warrant given by the sect. Chapter 31. Bandit Stronghold. The Xuanian sect again. Arliss reading Omicron N Beta OX Nouvelle. So M. Hearing this, a cold light flashed across Yi Zan's eyes. Huang Ling and Shui Min had said earlier that the cultivation practitioners of the Xuanian sect had taken over most of the cities of the Great Qian dynasty under the banner of suppressing bandits. It now truly seemed to be the case. However, it was impossible for those fellows from the Xuanian sect to be so benevolent. What exactly were they plotting? I don't need specific information. As the city lord of Yunhai City, you should at least be aware of the number of bandits in Yunhai's city vicinity, right? You just need to tell me their general locations. Yi Zan said. Yes, sir. Lin Yuan nodded, and then ordered his servants to retrieve the information about the bandits from the city lord's mansion. After Lin Yuan handed over the information, Yi Zan used his spiritual sense to scan and memorize all of the information. Yi Zan then waved his sleeve and turned into a ray of light, leaving with you and the others. Looking at the direction where Yi Zan disappeared, Lin Yuan's eyes flickered. He also had some doubts in his heart. As the second best sect in the Great Qian dynasty, the strength of the Xuanian sect was undeniable. Under normal circumstances, the other party should have wiped out all the bandits around Yunhai City easily after taking over the task of suppressing the bandits. However, for some reason, as time passed, the bandits around Yunhai City became more and more rampant. Previously, they had only gone after the wealth of the surrounding villages, but now they were starting massacres. At that moment, Lin Yuan felt an inexplicable sense of foreboding. However, whenever he sent people to observe the behavior of the cultivation practitioners of the Xuanian sect, he found that the other party had indeed been suppressing the bandits. Especially those bandits who were brutal and massacred the villages, they were all killed mercilessly by the practitioners of the Xuanian sect. However, the strange thing was that the number of the bandits around Yunhai City did not decrease, but increased instead, despite more and more bandits being killed. Lin Yuan had once suspected those practitioners of the Xuanian sect, but he did not dare to interfere in the affairs of the Xuanian sect after the leader of the other party exerted pressure on him. He knew very well that he was only a small city lord of Yunhai City. Even if the Xuanian sect was plotting something, it was not something a small figure like him could interfere with. Swoosh. The spiritual power in Yi Zan's body gushed out, bringing Yu and the others along with him at an extremely fast speed, tearing through the sky and heading toward the direction of the mountain. It was clear from the information just now that there were a total of 23 bandit strongholds around the Yunhai city. Of course, this was after excluding those bandits who had already been eliminated. He headed toward the east of Yunhai city. If those bandits who massacred Lin Shi village were still alive, then they were most likely hiding in this area. A vast and boundless mountain in the east of Yunhai city. This place was only 20 kilometers away from the Netherworld forest. On this steep mountain, one could see some stone houses. There were many caves on the mountain, and these houses were connected to these caves in an ingenious way. Looking at it from afar, it was indeed quite marvelous. Many people lived in these caves or stone houses. This was a mountain bandit stronghold near Yunhai city. They called themselves the Mountain Wonder Stronghold. The composition of this group of bandits was extremely complicated. Many of them were cultivators who were wanted by the Great Qian dynasty's officials, and there were also some desperate people. Other than that, there were also many abandoned disciples from the various sects. However, at this moment, they had all gathered in this mountain stronghold. All their old identities had been thrown away, and now everyone here was just a bandit. 3 days ago, they had gathered their numbers and completely robbed a village 9 miles away from here. Not only did they take away all the wealth and food of the villagers, but they also took with them all of the young and beautiful women in the village. Of course, there were many villagers who chose to resist, but only death awaited them. After all, the bandit leader of the mountain stronghold had reached the 3rd level of the true essence state, and the strongest one in the village they had killed had only reached the 7th level of the refinement state, so how could they possibly resist the invasion of these bandits? The whole village was plunged into a sea of blood and despair. The strong villagers who resisted the bandits had all been killed, and the young and beautiful women had been taken away. Even the newborn babies had been mercilessly killed by these bandits. These bandits were like merciless killing machines. They brought the loot they had stolen back to the village and held a celebration party. Why don't you scream? If I scream, do you dare not to scream? Are you dead? Can't you hear what I'm saying? At this moment, a man's impatient voice could be heard from inside one of the caves. The man mercilessly slapped the woman's face. The broad and thick palm was imbued with a strong force. The woman's face was slightly deformed from the slap. A red palm print suddenly appeared on her face, and streams of blood flowed out from the corner of her mouth. However, the woman did not seem to feel anything. Her eyes were empty, and no screams emerged from her mouth. Her eyes were filled with despair. She had given up on life in this world. She could not even commit suicide in the hands of these brutal and shameless bandits. FCK, this is boring. The man slapped the woman's face again, and then pulled up his pants. He spat on the woman's face and left the cave with an unhappy expression. How boring. If this BTCH doesn't cooperate in a few days, then I'll kill her. After leaving the cave, the man walked outside and took a deep breath. His expression was still vicious. However, the next second, his expression changed. What? 4 figures suddenly appeared in his field of vision, a man and 3 women. Most importantly, they did not rely on any magic treasures and just stood there in midair. How is this possible? Who are you? When the man saw this scene, his pupils shrank and his body trembled. They were able to stand in the air without relying on any magic treasures, which could only mean one thing. This could only be achieved by core formation state cultivators, who were far above the true essence state. Yi Zan looked at the man indifferently, but, beside him, Huangling and Shui Min's eyes were filled with monstrous rage. Yu's fingernails were digging into her palm. Her eyes seemed as if they were about to spit fire, and her small body trembled with anger. This mountain housed one of the bandit strongholds in Lin Yuan's information. What happened? The bandits in the cave seemed to have sensed the movement outside and hurried out. When their eyes caught sight of Yi Zan and the others floating in the air, their expressions also changed. My lords, one of the bandits was about to speak, but he was directly cut in half by Huangling's sword. Whoosh, whoosh, a few sharp sword lights flashed, and the robbers who came out of the cave were all killed by Huangling's sword. Yi Zan also narrowed his eyes, and then indifferently said, kill. Huangling and the others acknowledged the order. The spiritual power fluctuations gushed out. Holding their weapons, they charged at the bandits. At that moment, countless bandits revealed panicked expressions as they frantically fled in all directions. At the same time, they frantically shouted, "We're being attacked." were being attacked. Chapter 32. The Mastermind. What happened? Who dares to attack our mountain stronghold? Arliss reading Omicron N Beta OX Nouvelle. So M. At this moment, a middle-aged man walked out of a rather luxurious stone house. The middle-aged man looked at the mountain bandits who were running away in a panicked state and frowned. Second Commander, there's trouble. Powerful cultivators are attacking our mountain stronghold. When the bandits spotted the second commander, they quickly gathered around him as if they had seen their savior. When the second commander saw this, he could not help but squint his eyes. Very quickly, he saw 3 women wielding sharp weapons, quickly reaping the lives of the bandits. What beautiful girls! When the second commander saw you, he immediately revealed a lewd expression. However, his expression quickly changed. The strength of the bandits was not weak. However, this group of women were easily taking their lives. It was obvious that these women were strong. Brothers, quickly go back and get your weapons. Let's capture these 3 girls. The second commander roared angrily. He then returned to the stone house and took out a sharp long knife. Follow the second commander and capture the girls together. Under the second commander's lead, the bandits instantly became more confident. They rushed toward Huang Ling and the others with long sabers, sticks, and other weapons. However, their expressions soon changed. The cultivation levels of these 3 women was extremely powerful. They could not even get close to them before being cut into 2 by the sharp sword chi. Shua. As a terrifying sword chi flashed past, a stone house not far away suddenly split into 2 and instantly exploded. Damn it! These girls are so powerful. The second commander saw this scene and narrowed his eyes. It was obvious that these 3 women had not used their full strength earlier, which caused him to misjudge their strength. The strength they were showcasing now indicated that all 3 of them had definitely reached the true essence state. Although he was not weak, he was only at the first level of the true essence state, and not very strong either. Any core disciple of the major sects who was at the same cultivation level as him would be able to easily crush him. These 3 women were so young, but their cultivation levels had already reached the true essence states. They had to be genius cultivators from one of the top sects. Given their strength, the bandits were no match for them. Therefore, he had to seize the opportunity to escape with his life. Brothers, hurry up and kill them. Don't be afraid. The second commander roared angrily and urged the surrounding bandits to charge toward Huang Ling's group. However, the very next second, he stopped and suddenly ran in the other direction frantically. HMPH. Can you escape? Seeing this, Yu's eyes gleamed with a cold light. The sword in her hand shone brilliantly. In an instant, she had blown away more than a dozen bandits and was charging toward the second commander. Damn it! Seeing this, the second commander's expression could not help but change. The long blade in his hand then released his true essence energy, chopping off a rock that weighed thousands of jin which smashed toward Yu. He wanted to use the power of the huge rock to hinder Yu's pursuit. Shua. However, he was destined to be disappointed. The sword in Yu's hand shone with a bright light. The sharp sword chi instantly crushed the huge rock into pieces. Whoosh! With a flash sword chi, the second commander's body was bisected. Such a large commotion had taken place in the stronghold, so the first commander naturally noticed it. However, after seeing the power Huang Ling and the others displayed, he immediately decided to retreat. While the second commander and the others were fighting against Huang Ling, he quietly used the stronghold's secret passage to escape. Had it only Huang Ling and the others, the first commander might indeed have been able to escape quietly. Unfortunately, there was still Yi Zan, who had reached the golden core state. The next second, a pressure that caused even the first commander's soul to feel fear quietly spread out. His footsteps suddenly stopped, and his body could not stop trembling. Most importantly, he found that he could no longer move. There was no helping it. The difference in strength between the 2 sides was too great. A mere 3rd-level true essence state commander was like an ant in Yi Zan's eyes. Ah, swish, rumble. Within a short period of time, all the bandits in the mountain stronghold had been eliminated. Yi Zan, who was standing on top of a huge rock, stretched out his hand and gently made a grabbing motion. The secret passageway in the mountain stronghold immediately burst open, and then a terrifying invisible force grabbed the first commander's neck and pulled him out. The first commander's eyes were filled with despair. He wanted to kneel down and beg for mercy, but not only could he not move, he could not even speak. Yi Zan could not be bothered to listen to him. His powerful spiritual sense directly invaded the commander's soul as he used the simplest and most violent method to find the information he wanted. Okay, let's go. After finding the information he needed, Yizan gently patted the first commander's body and it immediately exploded. Yizan then turned around and looked at Yu. Master, I. Seeing this, Yu's hand that was holding the Qingyan sword could not help but tremble slightly. She naturally knew what Yizan implied. Her master had already found the whereabouts of the group of bandits who had massacred her village 2 years ago. It was true that Yizan had indeed found the whereabouts of those bandits from the memories of the first commander. Coincidentally, not only did the first commander of this mountain stronghold know what had happened 2 years ago, but he also knew some information related to the Xuanian sect. The reason why the bandits around Yunhai City were so brutal was indeed related to the Xuanian sect. Those cultivation practitioners from the Xuanian sect were actually commanding those bandits to slaughter the villagers. Their purpose was very simple. They wanted to collect enough qi and blood essence. The Xuanian sect really deserves to die. At that moment, there was a cold gleam in Yizan's eyes. Although the memories of the first commander indicated that he did not know whether those cultivation practitioners were from the Xuanian sect at first, after Yizan saw the martial techniques displayed by the other party, he knew the identity of the other party. Moreover, it was clear from the first commander's memories that the massacre in Yu's village had something to do with the Xuanian sect. Were it not for the instruction of those cultivation practitioners of the Xuanian sect, that group of bandits would not have massacred Yu's village. At most, they would have plundered and stolen the wealth of the villagers. At first, that group of bandits only plundered the wealth of the village. However, under the instruction of the cultivation practitioners of the Xuanian sect, they returned and massacred all of the villagers in Linxi village. The reason for this was simple. The Xuanian sect had agreed to give them cultivation methods, medicinal pills, and weapons as long as they massacred all the villagers. The Mountain Wonder Stronghold, where the first commander was located, also received similar benefits from the Xuanian sect. Under the instruction of the cultivation practitioners of the Xuanian sect, the first commander and the others had massacred 3 villages. Whether it was an old man with a foot in the grave or a newborn child, they had all been slaughtered. Chapter 33. Bloodstones, the intentions of the Xuanian sect. The purpose of the Xuanian sect was very simple. They wanted to obtain the qi and blood essence of the villagers. Arlise reading Omicron N Beta OX Nouvelle. So when a human died, the qi and blood essence in their body would be released quickly. Normally, the qi and blood essence would dissipate into heaven and earth. However, if one had a special method or magic treasure, they could collect the qi and blood essence. The reason why the cultivation practitioners of the Xuanian sect could collect the qi and blood essence was because each one of them carried a treasure called a bloodstone. Through the use of the bloodstone, they could absorb the qi and blood essence of the dead. 1. By some lucky coincidence, the first commander had overheard a discussion among the cultivation practitioners that the Xuanian sect was collecting the qi and blood essence of these human beings not for their own personal cultivation purposes, but rather for the sect, and that these bloodstones had to be handed over to the sect elders. When Yizan saw this scene in the first commander's memories, he had a flash of realization when he recalled the various cultivation methods of the Xuanian sect over the past few years. He had already seen through the intentions of the Xuanian sect. Qi and blood essence were the core cultivation requirements for a cultivation practitioner who had broken through to the peak of the core formation state. Most importantly, the amount of qi and blood essence required for a cultivation practitioner to break through to the unity realm was an astronomical figure. The Xuanian sect sent their cultivation practitioners to various cities in the Great Qian dynasty. On the surface, they were acting under the banner of righteousness to suppress the bandits, but, in fact, they were instructing the bandits to slaughter the villagers and secretly collecting the qi and blood essence. After that, they brought the qi and blood essence back to the sect using the bloodstones. The qi and blood essence in a single person's body was limited, but it would be a different story if they slaughtered hundreds of people. As long as enough people were involved, they would be able to gather enough qi and blood essence. With such a huge amount of qi and blood essence, would it not be easy for a cultivation practitioner in the late stage of the golden core state to reach the peak stage of the core formation state or beyond? The Great Qian dynasty had a population of hundreds of millions, and the Tianyuan continent was a cultivation world where the strong preyed on the weak. Even if a large number of people were killed every day, the royal family of the Great Qian dynasty would not be able to detect anything as long as these massacres were dealt with quietly. After all, these bandits were mostly desperados, and many of them had massacred villages before, so it would be difficult to detect any changes if the cultivators of the Xuanian sect merely ordered the massacres of a few more villages here and there. What a good plan. Thinking this, Yizan sneered. He had basically learned that there was a powerful old cultivator hidden in the Xuanian sect, whose cultivation had at least broken through to the late stage of the Golden Core state. It seemed that the plan to seek revenge on the Xuanian sect would have to be delayed a few more days. At the very least, his cultivation base had to break through to the late stage of the Golden Core state or the peak stage of the Golden Core state. He would head to Zhongqing City later instead. If Li Qingyan could pass his test, he would take her in as his disciple. At that point, he would be able to gain more rewards from the system, after which his cultivation would likely reach the late stage of the Golden Core state. Let's go. Yi Zan then waved his sleeve, and a huge amount of power gushed forth from his body. It swept up Yu and the others and flew away. After Yi Zan and the others left, there were sounds of crying and weeping echoing all over the mountain stronghold. We are finally saved. Ali, where are you? The group of animals who abused us have all been killed by our benefactor. We are finally free. These godforsaken beastards finally got their comeuppance. Oh God, you finally opened your eyes and delivered justice. Thank you, benefactor. Thank you, benefactor. Many naked women knelt down in the direction where Yi Zan and the others had left. Their faces were full of gratitude. Xiaoshui, we can go home now. Is our home still there? According to the first commander's memories, the bandits who had massacred Linxi village were gathered at a place called Shidong. They called their village Fengshuan Stronghold. The bandits in the mountain village had all drifted together from extremely distant places. Originally, they wanted to continue drifting in search of a relatively wealthy city before robbing their homes. However, just after they finished robbing Linxi village, a few mysterious cultivators suddenly came knocking on their doors. They claimed to be from a large sect, and wanted to cooperate with the bandits. Their proposal was very simple. The cultivators wanted them to slaughter a village within a set period of time. The wealth, food, and those young and beautiful women in the village would all belong to the bandits. As for the mysterious cultivators, they only needed to obtain the chi and blood essence of the villagers when they were on the verge of death. The rewards offered by the other party were also very tempting. They would be given some relatively high-level cultivation methods, as well as expensive medicinal pills and martial techniques. This business deal was simply too good to pass up. The leader of the group of mountain bandits agreed without the slightest hesitation. The mountain bandits were originally vagrants. Robbing, burning, killing, and plundering were just trivial matters to them. Hearing that they would even be rewarded generously for their crimes, they all jump at the opportunity. Therefore, under the instruction of those mysterious cultivators, within these 2 years, they had already massacred 6 villages. If things had been the same as before, the city lord's mansion would have furiously mobilized a large number of cultivation practitioners to encircle and suppress them. However, after 2 years, the city lord's mansion of Yunhai City had not shown any sign of activity. They even heard that the cultivation practitioners of the Xuanian sect had taken on the mission to suppress the bandits. Just as they were starting to feel fearful, those mysterious cultivation practitioners appeared again. They made it clear that they had a friendly relationship with the cultivation practitioners of the Xuanian sect, and those that worked with them would not be targeted by them. Later on, the mountain stronghold slaughtered 2 more villages. After realizing that the cultivation practitioners of the Xuanian sect had remained silent, they finally felt relieved. Today, they had received another mission from those mysterious cultivation practitioners, and were supposed to slaughter another village. However, the village was close to 30 kilometers away from their mountain stronghold. The first commander had already led most of the bandits to that village early in the morning. Currently, there were only a few people left guarding the mountain stronghold. Inside a simple and unadorned wooden house in the Fengshuan stronghold, a man dressed in cyan black robes sat cross-legged on the bed. His gaze landed on a bloodstone in front of his chest. Looking at the dense blood essence gushing out from the bloodstone, he revealed a satisfied expression. Phew, the mission was finally completed. Once senior brother returns, I can return to the sect to complete the mission. The man muttered to himself. Chapter 34. Exterminating the Fengshuan stronghold. I won't need those bandits from the Fengshuan stronghold after this. When they come back, I'll send them off to the underworld. Arliss reading Omicron N Beta OX Nouvelle. So M. At that moment, the man's lips curled up into a sneer. He was a cultivation practitioner from the Xuanian sect, though the bandits in the stronghold did not know that. They believed that he was a cultivator from some mysterious sect. The Xuanian sect had always been brutal in terms of their methods and techniques. Now that the mountain stronghold had lost its value, there was no need for it to exist anymore. Once they completed their mission, it was time to tie up loose ends. In this way, not only could they keep the Bloodstones a secret, but they could also put on an act for the great Qian dynasty to see. Over the past few years, the Fengshuan stronghold had become a well-known bandit stronghold that everyone in the Yunhai city wanted to destroy. As long as they completely eradicated the Fengshuan stronghold, they would definitely gain the support of countless people. Not only would they be able to obtain a huge amount of qi and blood essence, but they would also be able to improve the image of their sect at the same time. It was like killing two birds with one stone. This man and another cultivation practitioner of the Xuanian sect were the ones responsible for supervising the Fengshuan stronghold. That way, if they discovered that someone wanted to leak the secret, it would be easier for them to eradicate the enemy. Although these bandits were not aware of their origins, it would be bad if other cultivation practitioners of other sects recognized their identities. The bloodstone on the man's chest had absorbed enough qi and blood essence when he was slaughtering another village a while back. Now, he just needed to wait for his senior brother's bloodstone to absorb enough qi and blood essence before their mission was complete. There would be no reason to keep Fengshuan's stronghold around then. Not good. Enemy attack. Just as the man put away the bloodstone, a series of panicked shouts suddenly echoed throughout the stronghold. What? The man frowned when he heard this, and then he quickly walked out. He saw that there were 4 people attacking Fengshuan's stronghold, 1 man and 3 women. How can there be such a beautiful woman? When the man's eyes landed on you, his eyes lit up. However, his expression changed drastically shortly after. How is this possible? She's actually a 5th level true essence state cultivator. The next second, the sword in Yu's hand emitted a sharp aura, and then she charged toward the bandits of Fengshuan stronghold. The true essence in her body swept out, and a powerful force quickly reaped the lives of those bandits. Huang Ling and Shui Min, who were beside her, did not make a move. This was also Yi Zan's intention. The bandits of Fengshuan stronghold were the murderers who had massacred Lin Shi village. Logically speaking, Yu should take revenge herself. Only then would she be able to completely resolve the knot in her heart. The strength of a 5th level true essence state cultivator was so powerful that none of the bandits were a match for her. They could not even withstand a single blow from Yu. Some of these bandits were in the Qi transformation state, though most were at the peak of the refinement state. How could they withstand Yu's attacks? Yu's movement technique was as fast as a cheetah's. Even when faced with dozens of bandits who were working together, none of them could land a blow on her. Damn it, this woman's strength is too terrifying. Hurry up and run. The bandits who were still alive cried out with fear. After seeing their companions fall one by one, how could they still have any thoughts of resisting? Damn it, where did these people come from? Seeing this scene, the man's expression also changed greatly. He then moved his body and retreated frantically. Although his cultivation had also reached the 5th level of the true essence state, he could not help but feel his heart palpitate when he felt the true origin power emitted from Yu's body. He was especially wary of that longsword. Its grade was definitely not ordinary. Even if he attacked, he might not be able to defeat Yu. More importantly, she did not come alone. Especially that man standing on top of the huge rock. Although he did not sense any spiritual power fluctuations from that man, when his gaze landed on that man, his heart trembled. That man's cultivation must have reached an extremely terrifying level. It was at the very least not lower than the purple spirit state. Damn it, it just so happens that senior brother isn't here. Why did this group of people come over at this time? Why do that woman's moves feel so familiar? I think I've seen it somewhere before. Could it be that this woman is from a top-tier sect? Once the man made his way beyond Yi Zan's line of sight, the power in his body gushed out crazily, and then he ran away quickly. Several thoughts flashed through his mind. However, at this moment, he felt an extremely terrifying pressure fall from the sky, suppressing him to the point that he could not move at all. This is the pressure of a core formation state cultivator. Realizing this, the man widened his eyes in astonishment. He was a cultivator from the Xuanian sect, so how could he not know what such powerful pressure represented? Only a core formation state cultivator could render a 5th level true essence state cultivator like him unable to move using just his spiritual pressure. Damn it, how did I end up meeting such a powerful cultivator? The man cursed in despair helplessly. The very next second, an invisible force suddenly grabbed the man's neck and pulled him over to Yi Zan's side. Ah, messenger, please save us. Help, I don't want to die yet. The man who was held in the air by an invisible force could only watch as all the bandits in the stronghold were slaughtered. Although the first commander of the Fengshuan stronghold had taken away most of the forces, the fourth commander of the Whirlwind stronghold was still alive. He was a cultivator who had reached the first level of the core formation state. However, all of his comrades had fallen at the hands of the woman holding the longsword. As expected, it's the Xuanian sect again. Yi Zan reached out his hand and gently waved it, easily catching the man in front of him. At the same time, a bright light flashed and the bloodstone in the man's arm suddenly landed in Yi Zan's palm. Seeing this, the man's eyes flickered furiously. He wanted to struggle, but he could not free himself from the invisible power at all. Bang! Yi Zan gently squeezed his palm and the bloodstone in his palm instantly turned into nothingness. The rich qi and blood power slowly dissipated back into heaven and earth. Just the impure qi and blood essence was not enough to tempt him. Only those old monsters at the end of their lifespan would come up with such a crazy idea of wanting to use the impure qi and blood essence from mortals to break through. Chapter 35. The Savage Bandits. The next second, Yi Zan's spiritual sense suddenly invaded the man's mind, and he used extremely violent methods to examine the man's memories. Arliss reading Omicron N Beta Ox Nouvelle. So M. After obtaining the information he needed, the man's soul was also torn apart and dissipated. They are heading to Tashi village. Yi Zan snapped his fingers lightly, and the man immediately exploded and turned into nothingness. His gaze then fell on Yu, who was not far away. Blood dripped from Yu's sword, and her body was covered with the scent of blood. As she stared at the destruction she had wrought in the stronghold, there was not a trace of pity on her face. It was this group of bandits who had brutally massacred her village back then. While she did not remember many enemies, the fourth commander who had fallen under her sword was one of them. Back then, it was this fourth commander who had wielded a long saber and slaughtered Lin Shi village. He did not even spare the elderly and newborn children. Yu would never forget the appearance of the fourth commander. The sword in her hand did not hesitate to split the fourth commander in twain. Just before the light from the fourth commander's eyes faded away, his mind seemed to recall something. The terrifying girl in front of him wielding a longsword seemed to be the lone survivor from Lin Shi village 2 years ago. She had come back to take revenge. However, how could a powerless girl become so strong in just 2 years? The fourth commander could not comprehend this. He died with a face full of unwillingness. Whoosh! Yi Zan waved his sleeve and then flew away with Yu and the others. They headed toward Tashi village, where the rest of Yu's remaining enemies were gathered. In Tashi village. What are you waiting for? If you don't hurry up, I'll chop you into pieces. Hurry up and cooperate. Hand over all of the wealth in the village and the food. Damn it. What are you looking at? Are you looking to die? The bandits held sharp weapons in their hands and roared at the villagers ferociously. Some of the villagers who wanted to resist had their arms and legs broken by them. Those who dared to look them in the eye would be slapped in the face. The difference in strength between the two sides was too big, so the villagers could only endure the humiliation in order to survive. They hurriedly returned to their homes and took out all their wealth and food. If they were slightly slower, their limbs would be broken by these bandits. However, that was not the worst part. Some of the more brutal bandits directly cut them down with their blades. Hurry up. Don't waste our time. Right at this moment, a man wearing a cyan robe was shouting impatiently. The middle-aged man next to him nodded with an ingratiating smile. Okay. I will go and urge them. The burly middle-aged man was the first commander of the Fengshuan stronghold. He was a cultivation practitioner who had reached the 5th level of the true essence state, and his name was Bajuluo. The person Bajuluo was trying to please was the cultivation practitioner from the Xuanian sect. This Xuanian cultivator's identity was not simple. He was the personal disciple of an elder, and also Duan Wuji's brother. His name was Duan Wuyi, and he was a cultivation practitioner who had reached the 8th level of the true essence state. Hurry and finish up. If you see anyone dawdling, drag them out and chop them up. Bajuluo then shouted, Did you hear that? I told you to be faster. Are you deaf? The next second, one of the bandits kicked a hunchbacked man who was carrying several bags of food. I'm sorry. I know I'm wrong. I'll move faster. Although the hunchbacked man was extremely angry, he could only smile and restrain himself. He did not dare to display any dissatisfaction. After all, he did not have the slightest talent when it came to cultivation. He was just an ordinary civilian. A few years ago, when he went to the mountains to search for yams, he was attacked by demonic beasts. Although he was lucky enough to survive, his back had indeed suffered serious injuries. After that incident, he became a hunchback. As his back and waist injuries were chronic, he could only carry 2 bags of food with much effort. Naturally, his speed was much slower than the other able-bodied villagers. He was extremely clear in his heart that ordinary citizens like him were nothing but ants in the eyes of these bandits and cultivators. In any case, these bandits were only robbing them of wealth and food. As long as they could ensure the safety of their wives and children, they would do what was necessary to satisfy them. Dignity did not matter here. For the safety of his family, he was willing to let them trample on him. It's already too late to apologize. The bandit had a vicious expression on his face as the corners of his mouth curled up into a cold smile. The long saber in his hand flickered with a sharp light as he slashed down toward the hunchbacked man. Swoosh! As the dazzling saber light flashed past, fresh blood instantly gushed out. Father! A 5 or 6-year-old boy in the crowd could not help but let out a heart-wrenching cry of sadness when he saw this. Husband! At the same time, the woman beside the boy also knelt on the ground in grief. Her face was filled with a mournful expression as she charged toward the bandit without caring about anything else. You animals, if you want money, I'll give you money. Why didn't you let him go? You're courting death. When the bandit saw this, the fierce expression on his face became even more intense. The long saber in his hand slashed down once again. Another stream of bright red blood spurted out. Mother! When the boy saw this scene, he cried out miserably. Tears streamed down his face, and his eyes were filled with despair. His fingernails dug deeply into the palm of his hand, so deeply that they drew blood. The boy cried while looking at the bandit with immense hatred, after which he charged out of the crowd like a madman and charged toward the corpses of his parents. Even if the target was a child, there was no pity in the eyes of the bandit. He slowly raised the long saber again. Little Zongbin, don't be rash. These animals are too much. They are treating human lives like grass. Villagers, let's not endure it anymore. We will perish together with these animals. Many of the men in the village were furious. Their eyes were filled with hatred toward this group of mountain bandits. They wanted to rush over and save the boy. However, the strongest among them was only at the 3rd level of the refinement state. How could they resist these bandits? The sharp saber light flashed again. It was about to split the boy's head into 2. Chapter 36. Do you still remember me? Shu. Arliss reading Omicron N Beta OX Nouvelle. So M. A sword chi that exuded a resplendent light flashed past. The long saber in the bandit's hand instantly shattered. At the same time, there was the sound of flesh being torn apart. The bandit's body instantly stiffened. He lowered his head with great difficulty and saw a deep wound on his chest in which his bones were visible. How? The light in the robber's eyes gradually faded, and he collapsed to the ground dead. Who's there? Seeing this, Bajuluo's eyes darted around, and his expression instantly turned vigilant. However, Duan Wui's gaze immediately turned toward a certain direction. The figures of a man and 3 women slowly appeared in his field of vision. These 4 people were all very young, and it looked like the oldest among them was only around 20 years old. They walked slowly toward the robbers. Dark clouds covered the sky as if heralding an impending storm. Rustle. At the same time, gusts of strong wind suddenly whipped past, causing the trees to shake and the dust on the ground to be swept up. Who exactly are you all? How dare you attack my Fengshuan stronghold? When Bajuluo saw this, he took a step forward. His eyes were filled with ferocity. First commander of the Fengshuan stronghold, do you remember me? Yu held the incomparably sharp Qingyan sword in her hand as she slowly walked forward. The sharp tip of the sword split the ground as she dragged it along the ground. Her face was extremely beautiful, and she had bright eyes and white teeth. Her star-like gaze landed on Bajuluo. However, her gaze was filled with hatred. Her snow-white clothes had long been stained with bright red blood. However, it was precisely because of this that you displayed a different kind of beauty. Rustle. In an instant, the wind surged and the clouds rose. The strong wind swept up the sand on the ground. Remember you. When Bajuluo saw this, he frowned slightly. He deeply immersed himself in his memories. When had he ever met such a beautiful woman? It's normal that you don't remember. After all, countless people died in your hands. Why would you care about the lives of commoners like us? How would you remember the appearance of a girl who narrowly escaped death and was forced to cross the netherworld forest? You slowly walked toward Bajuluo. When she saw the face that often filled her nightmares, the memories of that tragic incident from 2 years ago involuntarily surfaced in her mind. At this moment, neither Bajuluo or Duan Wui dared to act rashly. After all, the strength that you displayed earlier was not ordinary. The origin of this person was unknown, but she definitely was not some common character. Under the circumstances where they were uncertain about the identities of their enemies, it would be unwise to act rashly. However, compared to Bajuluo, Duan Wui's experience and breadth of knowledge was clearly richer. When his gaze landed on the Qingyan sword in Yu's hand, he felt that something was very wrong. The grade of this weapon was not low. Even he had never come into contact with such a high-grade weapon. Most importantly, he could not see through the young man's aura at all. He could not detect any spiritual power fluctuations from his body. However, when the young man glanced at him, his heart palpitated madly as if warning him of an impending threat to his life. Moreover, he felt that this young man's appearance seemed somewhat familiar. He felt that he had seen him somewhere before, but where? No matter how hard Duan Wui racked his brain, he was unable to recall who this young man was. He was different from Duan Wuji. The latter had just seen Yizan's portrait, so he naturally knew Yizan's identity. However, when Duan Wui left the sect, he had only taken a quick glance, so he did not have much of an impression of him. Forced to cross the netherworld forest. Hearing this, Bajuluo narrowed his eyes. The doubtful expression in his eyes became even stronger, but, at the same time, his body also silently tensed up. Ta. When she was close to 50 meters away from Bajuluo, Ayu halted her footsteps. Her star-like gaze fell upon Bajuluo's body. Her eyes were filled with monstrous hatred. Gusts of strong wind surged around them, shaking the large trees around the village. The dried leaves on the ground were swept up by the strong wind. Whoosh, whoosh. Yu's clothes, which were stained with fresh red blood, fluttered in the wind. Her long, beautiful hair slowly rose and fell on her shoulders. Do you remember what happened at Linshi village 2 years ago? Yu looked at Bajuluo and said slowly. Whoosh. The Qingyan sword in Yu's hand suddenly shook. A streak of bright light suddenly lit up, illuminating their originally dark and dim surroundings. At the same time, Bajuluo also suddenly came back to his senses, and the events of the past appeared in his mind. What? You are actually the girl who survived the Linshi village massacre. You actually made it through the netherworld forest. When Bajuluo heard this, his eyes widened. He now remembered that, 2 years ago, he led the members of Fengshuan Stronghold to completely slaughter Linshi village. However, at that time, there was indeed a little girl who managed to escape. Bajuluo was not the only one who recalled this. The other bandits present at Fengshuan Stronghold back then did too. They had a deep impression of this girl. In the entirety of Linshi village, Yu was the most delicate and pretty-looking girl. It was also because of this that those bandits did not want to kill Yu, but wanted to bring her back to the stronghold instead. Unfortunately for them, Yu's father's cultivation had reached the 4th level of the refinement state, and he protected Yu with his life. Even though her father was almost cut in half by the first commander, he still managed to throw Yu into the netherworld forest before he died. Of course, at that time, Bajuluo also had the opportunity to capture Yu in the netherworld forest. However, at that time, Duan Wui had been overly cautious and did not personally come out to collect the qi and blood essence. As such, Bajuluo had been placed in charge of the bloodstone. The qi and blood essence emitted by a person before death was the densest, and it would rapidly dissipate with the passage of time. He was afraid of wasting too much time chasing Yu, and also wanted to avoid any repercussions from Duan Wui. As such, he chose to return to the village and use the bloodstone to collect the qi and blood essence. In order to speed up the pace of collecting the qi and blood essence, the mountain stronghold's commander personally took care of the villagers. He only sent some bandits with lower cultivation to chase after Yu. Earlier, the bandits had wanted to capture Yu alive, so they did not try to kill her directly. Otherwise, Yu's father would not have been able to protect her. After that, Yu's father sacrificed his life to allow Yu to successfully escape from the bandits' vicious hands. In addition, the bandits were quite afraid of the demonic beasts in the depths of the netherworld forest, so Yu survived their cautious pursuit. After Bajuluo finished collecting all of the qi and blood essence of the villagers, he also hurried to the netherworld forest. However, after several days of fruitless tracking, he did not find any trace of Ayu. However, Bajuluo was not too bothered about it. After all, Ayu was a weak girl. If she was placed in the netherworld forest, she would almost certainly die. She would have been eaten by some demonic beast. However, he did not expect that the reason he could not find Yu was because, after witnessing her father's death, she had fainted due to grief. Furthermore, she had been taken away by a second-rank demonic beast, an ocelot. Furthermore, it was exactly this ocelot that had scared the bandits away. The ocelot carried you and ran toward the depths of the netherworld forest. However, on the way, it was attacked by a third-rank demonic beast, the chaotic wood snake. In order to save its own life, the ocelot had no choice but to abandon you and flee. How could the chaotic wood snake let the ocelot go? The two chased each other into the depths of the forest and slowly disappeared. It was also because of this that you was able to escape. Perhaps the heavens pitied this girl with a tragic fate. Although you had encountered many disasters in the netherworld forest, she was lucky enough to survive. After wandering around for several months, she finally arrived at the Qingyan sect and met Yi Zan. The turning point in her life, her master. 1. If possible, you did not want to just be his disciple. Chapter 37. All of you will die. There were 5 or 6 villages that were completely slaughtered by the Fengshuan stronghold, which added up to close to 40,000 people. Arliss reading Omicron N Beta OX Nouvelle. So M. However, you was the only survivor among them. HMPH. You were lucky enough to survive back then. Instead of living peacefully out there, you actually dared to come back. Don't worry, I won't give you a second chance at survival. Seeing this, Bajuluo sneered. The other bandits also looked at you with a ferocious expression and then surrounded her. The reason why they had not recognized you immediately was because Yu's appearance had changed drastically. She had become even more beautiful and alluring. Although Yu's facial features did not change much, her temperament had been greatly improved since she awakened the sword jade physique. If the Yu from before could be considered a graceful beauty, then she was now a peerless beauty. Bajuluo's eyes were filled with a cold gleam. The 2-meter-long broadsword at his waist was instantly unsheathed. He first looked at Yu, then at Yi Zan and the other two who were not far away. Although he did not know the strength of Yi Zan and the others, there was a limit to how strong a young cultivator could be, no matter how talented they were. Most importantly, 2 years ago, Yu had still been a weak ordinary person. How much could she have changed in just 2 years? In his opinion, no matter how talented Yu was, her cultivation would at most have reached the 8th or 9th level of the refinement state. Now that he knew Yu's identity, the final doubts in Bajuluo's heart were completely dispelled. Perhaps the people around Yu were not simple, but they were not the only powerhouses here. He also had Duan Wei, who had reached the 8th level of the true essence state by his side. Bajuluo had seen Duan Wei's strength with his own eyes. Even he himself could not withstand 2 moves from him. Therefore, according to Bajuluo's speculation, after Yu had luckily escaped from the netherworld forest, she should have become a disciple of a sect. Now, after her cultivation reached a certain level, she had brought her senior and junior brothers back to avenge her village. Hey, after I capture you and bring you back to the stronghold, I will have scored a great contribution. As for the senior sister who came with you, she looks pretty good. I'll just keep her around as my wife. In fact, I'll keep both of them. Kiki. Bajuluo had a savage grin on his face. The true essence energy in his body surged out into the long saber. A sharp saber chi immediately spread out. At the same time, the surrounding bandits also activated the spiritual power in their dantians. In an instant, all kinds of spiritual power suddenly circulated, forming an extremely terrifying spiritual pressure. The surrounding villagers who were not cultivators immediately felt their chests tighten and knelt on the ground with incomparably terrified expressions. The bandits were all ready to attack. As long as Bajuluo gave the order, they would attack Yu. Although the villagers were scared out of their wits by their aura, Yu's expression did not change at all. Yu gently lifted the Qingyan sword, her jade-like hand gently pressed on the blade of the sword. Her cherry-like mouth opened slightly, and she continued to speak slowly. Father, mother, village chief grandpa and Aunt Huang, today, you will take revenge for the village. In an instant, her extremely dense true essence energy suddenly surged forth, and her jade-like bones blossomed with a resplendent sword chi power. Boom! An extremely powerful aura suddenly enveloped the surroundings. This is impossible. Seeing this, the bandits stared at her in shock. Those with lower cultivations felt an extremely powerful spiritual pressure sweep over their bodies, but they were unable to sense Yu's exact cultivation level. However, Bajuluo was very clear. The other party's cultivation had reached the 5th level of the true essence state, and the density of her true essence energy was even more terrifying than his. How is this possible? Bajuluo staggered backward, his eyes filled with disbelief. How could an ordinary person reach the 5th level of the true essence state in such a short time? How did she do it? It was true that ordinary people could not accomplish this feat, but it was different when it came to Yi Zan. At that moment, Bajuluo's heart was filled with disbelief. He did not want to believe what was happening right now. He had spent dozens of years cultivating, yet had only reached the 5th level of the true essence state. However, you had only spent 2 years to reach the same level. Could this be any more ridiculous? 2 years ago, he had been able to kill this girl with a single slap. Now, she had reached the same cultivation level as him. Let's attack together. We have to capture her. Bajuluo was also someone who could see the big picture, so he quickly calmed down and shouted. Although those bandits were scared, they did not dare to disobey the first commander's order. Besides, no matter how powerful Yu was, there was no way she could possibly withstand a siege by so many people, right? The first commander's cultivation level had reached the 5th level of the true essence state, while the second and third commanders had both reached the 3rd level of the true essence state. If they worked together, Yu would not be their match. Most importantly, they also had an extremely powerful cultivator from a mysterious sect behind them. Thinking this, the bandits immediately calmed down. They then charged towards Yu with weapons in hand. Brothers, charge, charge, take her down. Yeah, there are so many of us. Why should we be afraid of a little girl like her? At that moment, the bandits all roared in anger, trying to give themselves a morale and courage boost. All of you must die today. Seeing this, Yu raised her eyelids slightly. Her eyes were filled with coldness. The Qingyan sword in her hand released a dazzling sword chi, instantly splitting the unfortunate bandit who was the first to rush over into 2 halves. How could a mere 5th or 6th level chi transformation state cultivator withstand the sharp sword chi of the Qingyan sword? When everyone saw this scene, the confident smiles on their faces suddenly faded. Their eyes were filled with fear, and they wanted to retreat. Second and third, let's work together to take her down. What are you all standing there for? Hurry up and attack, Bajuluo roared angrily. His true essence energy surged forth, and his feet left a clear mark on the ground as he shot out like a cannonball. The long saber in his hand released a powerful saber chi which slashed toward Yu. Chapter 38. Don't come over. At the same time, the second and third commanders formed a pincer attack, completely surrounding Yu. Arliss reading Omicron N Beta Ox Nouvelle. So M. The surrounding bandits also held weapons in their hands as they encircled Yu. Even though she was faced with attacks from all directions, Yu did not panic in the slightest. The Qingyan sword in her hand blossomed with brilliant light, fiercely clashing against Bajuluo's long saber. Clang! An extremely powerful force suddenly swept out. The long saber in Bajuluo's hand instantly bent, and his body was forced back more than 10 steps. Damn it! What grade of weapon is that? Bajuluo's expression could not help but change greatly. Whether it was the strength of their true essence energy, or the grade of their weapons, he could not compare to Yu. Clang! Clang! The Qingyan sword in Yu's hand transformed into a sky full of sword shadows. With a crushing stance, she instantly sent the second and third commanders flying. Their cultivation levels were not as high as Yu's, and with the added difference in the grade of their weapons, they were easily and completely crushed by Yu. Were it not for the fact that there were too many bandits surrounding Yu, she would have only needed 2 moves to kill those 2. After the 2 of them fell to the ground, they looked at their trembling right hands. Their hearts were filled with fear. How could they still dare to continue fighting? The entire process happened within the blink of an eye. Before everyone could react, Yu lightly tapped her feet and stood up. Her sword chi formed a half-moon arc that swept out and slashed toward the bandits. Ah! In an instant, screams could be heard all over the place. In just an instant, that half-moon arc sword chi killed more than 10 bandits. When everyone saw this scene, they were terrified. The first commander could not defeat the other party, and the second and third commanders were sent flying with a single strike. The rest of the bandits could not even withstand a single strike from the other party without dying. How were they supposed to continue fighting like this? What exactly happened? How could an ordinary person from 2 years ago become so terrifying? At that moment, most of the bandits fearfully and frantically ran in all directions. However, would you let them off? Yu's figure moved, and the Qingyan sword in her hand emitted a resplendent light. Her sharp sword aura swept toward the bandits. Each sword strike took the lives of several bandits. Clang clang clang. The sword and the saber clashed madly, but Bajuluo was beaten back each. Cracks eventually started appearing on his long saber. Bang! At this moment, the Qingyan sword in Yu's hand burst forth with even more power, which instantly sent the long saber in Bajuluo's hand flying. At the same time, Yu's foot kicked Bajuluo's abdomen. The terrifying power of her kick was transmitted to Bajuluo's abdomen, sending him flying dozens of meters away. Puff! Bajuluo struggled to get up, and spat out a mouthful of blood. Why was there such a difference in strength between them? Were they not both fifth-level true essence state cultivators? Despite noticing the injured Bajuluo, Yu did not pursue him. Of course, it was not because she was soft-hearted, but rather because she did not want Bajuluo to die so easily. Yu immediately turned her attention to the other bandits. She would never forget that her father had been killed by these bandits. Yu, don't come over. If you come over again, I will kill him. The bandit saw Yu's cold gaze and was instantly terrified. In his panicked state, he placed his long saber on the neck of one of the villagers. He looked at Yu with a threatening gaze. However, Yu acted as if she did not hear his threat and slowly walked toward him. With Master around, there was no way these small fries could hurt those villagers. When he saw Yu continue walking forward, the bandit's face became even more ferocious and he roared with all his might. Are you deaf? Can you not hear what I'm saying? If you dare to take another step forward, I'll kill him immediately. Immediately, the bandit's spiritual power surged out crazily. His long saber was about to chop the villager to death. However, before he could do so, he found that an invisible spiritual pressure had completely restricted his movements, rendering him immobile. What's going on? The bandit immediately panicked. Those who despise life deserve death. Yu looked at the bandit expressionlessly. The Qingyan sword in her hand released a sharp sword chi which left a deep wound on the bandit's body. How did the bandits kill her father in the past? She would repay them tenfold today. Ah! The bandit screamed in pain. The deep wound was too painful. However, he could not move at this moment. He could only bear this pain that was worse than death. Run! Run! When the surrounding bandits saw this scene unfold, they felt fear within the depths of their hearts. They fled frantically. However, the next second, their faces also changed drastically. They discovered that their bodies could no longer move. What's going on? What's going on? Many of the bandits' faces were filled with shock. They suddenly realized that there was an invisible force that completely restrained their movements. There was a top-tier powerhouse here. Who was it? However, at this moment, no one knew who this top-tier powerhouse was. When they saw Yu slowly approaching them with the Qingyan sword in hand, their bodies involuntarily trembled, and their eyes were filled with fear. Yu did not show them the slightest bit of mercy. She repeated what they had done to her parents back then. At that moment, screams could be heard all over Tashi village. The bandits' screams made everyone's scalp tingle. When the villagers saw this scene, their eyes were filled with disbelief. This girl was too powerful. She had actually dealt with these bandits so easily. Kill these animals. These animals deserve to die. They deserve to die. When the villagers saw the bandits' miserable expressions, they did not show any mercy. Instead, they gritted their teeth and their faces were filled with hatred. Many of the villagers even cried because of this. Those brutal bandits had killed countless villagers and robbed them of almost everything. When they thought of their loved ones dying at the hands of those bandits, their hearts were filled with incomparable grief. Now that they were witnessing the bandits receiving the punishment they deserved, they could no longer restrain the overflowing emotions in their hearts. Chapter 39. Yi Zan. Seeing this scene unfold, Bajuluo was terrified. He had no intention of fighting anymore. Arliss reading Omicron N Beta OX Nouvelle. So although they were both fifth-level true essence state cultivators, why was the difference in their strength so great? Whether it was in terms of cultivation techniques or weapons, he could not be compared to Yu. Brother Duan, please. At this moment, Bajuluo hurriedly turned toward Duan Wei. He knew very well that although Yu was extremely powerful, if Duan Wei made a move, he would definitely be able to easily defeat her. However, when his gaze fell on Duan Wei, he saw an extremely shocking scene. Duan Wei's body could not stop trembling, and his eyes were filled with fear. You are Yi Zan. At the thought of this name, Duan Wei's heart was filled with despair. At this moment, he finally understood why he had been somewhat familiar with this young man's appearance. It was because this guy was Yi Zan of the Qingyan sect. Yi Zan was the peerless genius of the younger generation of the Great Qian dynasty. A top-notch expert who had entered the core formation realm at the age of 20, and who had even become an elder of the Qingyan sect. Yi Zan. What? Seeing this, Bajuluo looked puzzled. Rumble. At this moment, thunder and lightning filled the dark clouds in the sky. Bajuluo, who had just wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, could not help but tremble. Yi Zan. Who else could make Duan Wei so afraid? Although he was just a bandit, he had heard a little about Yi Zan, the genius who had caused an uproar in the entire Great Qian dynasty. There were only a few key pieces of information about Yi Zan that he needed to focus on. Yi Zan was a top-tier expert whose cultivation had reached the core formation state. Regardless of his background, this cultivation level itself spoke for itself. But was that young man really Yi Zan of the Qingyan sect? The youngest core formation state cultivator in the history of the Great Qian dynasty. Why would such a powerful top-tier expert appear here? Wait, he came here with you. Could it be? At this moment, Bajuluo's heart could not help but beat rapidly, and an extremely terrifying possibility appeared in his mind. A top-tier core formation state expert accompanying a true essence state cultivator here, what did this mean? The relationship between the two was definitely not simple. It was either a relationship with an elder or a master-disciple relationship. The other party was Yi Zan, known to be the greatest genius among the younger generation of the Great Qian dynasty. If he was really Yu's master, then Yu's strength could be explained. In just 2 years, a weak ordinary person had stepped into the 5th level of the true essence state. Had it been anyone else, they would have been accused of spouting nonsense, but if it was Yi Zan, it might actually be possible. Yi Zan's accomplishments were extremely legendary, so it was understandable that he would be able to teach such a genius disciple. Thinking of Yi Zan's existence, Bajuluo was extremely terrified. Earlier, although he was indeed no match for Yu, if he wanted to escape, the other party would not be able to stop him. However, if Yi Zan was here, even if he had wings, there was no way for him to escape. Bajuluo was not like Duan Wei, who came from a top-tier sect. He also did not have any powerful trump cards left behind by a master. Most importantly, what was the use of these so-called trump cards in the face of extremely powerful core formation state cultivators? I am Duan Wei of the Xuanian sect, a disciple of Elder Li. Greetings, Elder Yi Zan. Immediately, Duan Wei bowed respectfully to Yi Zan. What? You are from the Xuanian sect? Hearing this, Bajuluo's expression changed drastically. Damn it, so this guy was a cultivator from the Xuanian sect. We've been played. Although Bajuluo was very displeased, he saw a glimmer of hope after discovering Duan Wei's identity. After all, the Xuanian sect was the second most powerful sect in the Great Qian dynasty. Even Yi Zan had to give them some face, right? However, would this guy save me? Would the talented cultivators of these top-tier sects really care about our lives? Thinking this, Bajuluo suddenly became uneasy and frantically thought of countermeasures. Yi Zan did not even bother paying any attention to Duan Wei. He stood on the giant rock with a calm expression. Duan Wei could not help but feel awkward when he saw this. The reason why he lost his composure when he recognized Yi Zan's identity was because he had a secret he had to keep. After all, if Yi Zan found out that he was using the bloodstone to collect the qi and blood essence, it would definitely have a great impact on the Xuanian sect. After all, their actions had been cruel and inhumane. If news of this spread, the Xuanian sect would become the enemy of the entire Great Qian dynasty, especially the royal family of the Great Qian dynasty. They would never allow the Xuanian sect to exist. Although the Xuanian sect was ranked second in the Great Qian dynasty, one could not underestimate the power of the royal family. It was due to this that they had chosen to collect the qi and blood essence secretly. In the beginning, Duan Wei planned to destroy the Fengshuan stronghold together with his junior brother after he had collected enough qi and blood essence from the massacre of Tashi village. This way, no one would be able to reveal the secret of the bloodstone. Moreover, they would be able to gather the qi and blood essence of the cultivators of the Fengshuan stronghold while simultaneously completing the bandit suppression mission of the royal family of the Great Qian dynasty. This would thereby increase the reputation of the Xuanian sect. This could be said to be a plan that allowed them to kill 3 birds with 1 stone. However, Yi Zan had appeared at this critical moment, completely disrupting his plan. Although Duan Wei was extremely resentful, he did not dare to show the slightest bit of dissatisfaction on his face. Damn it, if the elders of my sect had also appeared here, there would be no need to be so aggrieved. At this moment, the screams of the bandits rang out once again. These bandits had massacred the villagers of Linshi village in the past. Those villagers would finally be avenged. As time passed, the bandits gradually lost their lives one after the other to use Qingyun's sword. Night fell. The dark clouds in the sky rumbled with the promise of an impending storm. Strong gales blew around, sweeping up the surrounding dust and sand, and spreading the thick smell of blood. Elder Yi, you. Seeing this scene, Duan Wui's face became extremely ugly. Looking at Yi Zan's appearance, it seemed that he was allowing the woman to destroy the Fengshuan stronghold. Since Duan Wui himself was also working with Bajuluo, would that mean that Yi Zan would also destroy him alongside them? Although Yu's strength was not weak, if the two sides fought, she would not be a match for him at all. However, the other side had a big shot like Yi Zan. Would he even be allowed to hurt Yu under Yi Zan's watch? Moreover, judging from Yi Zan's demeanor, he might even kill him directly. However, he was still a cultivator of the Xuanian sect. Would Yi Zan really dare to act? He could not guarantee that he would not. After all, Tashi village was located in a remote place. Even if Yi Zan really killed him, who would know or find out? Yi Zan's attitude of ignoring him made him feel increasingly uneasy. Chapter 40. I also killed your brother. Arliss reading Omicron N Beta OX Nouvelle. So M. At this moment, a few more mournful screams rang out. Of the entire Fengshuan stronghold, only the commanders remained. Yu's snow-white clothes were already soaked in blood. Her slightly disheveled hair danced in the wind. The next second, Yu slowly walked towards the third commander with the Qingyun sword in hand. As a sharp sword light flashed past, the third commander's head was separated from his body. I was wrong. I'm sorry. Please forgive me, okay? I will definitely change in the future. I will definitely be a good person. The second commander saw Yu walking toward him step by step. His body trembled in fear. He was so scared that he lost control of his urinary system. You can keep these words and tell them to those who died in hell. Yu's eyes were cold as she uttered the words that would seal his fate. Back then, countless villagers had begged for mercy in front of the second commander, but did he give them a chance? A sharp sword light flashed past, and the second commander's head was also separated from his body. Now, only the first commander, Bajuluo, was left. Don't kill me, it was all his doing. Feeling the scythe of the Grim Reaper on his neck, Bajuluo was completely flustered, and he ratted out Duan Wui without any hesitation. It's all the Xuanian sect's doing. It's all their doing. Originally, we only wanted to seize some wealth, didn't even think of killing you all. But this guy threatened our Fengshuan stronghold. They told us that, if we didn't act according to their instructions, that we would be the ones to die. If it wasn't for him, such a tragedy wouldn't have befallen Lin Shi village. It's all his fault. Right, his junior brother is still at our base. They are the main culprits behind the massacre of Lin Shi village. Your true enemies should be them. I'm begging you, please let me off. Bajuluo's face was filled with terror as he cried out. Kacha. Right at this moment, a terrifying bolt of lightning flashed in the sky and instantly lit up Bajuluo's face in the dark night. There was a frightened expression on his face coupled with a desperate look in his eyes. Hearing this, Duan Wui's expression changed drastically. Don't worry, I've already sent his junior brother to hell ahead of time. It's time for you to accompany him. I promise you that I'll send him to hell as well. Yu looked at Bajuluo icily. What? Junior brother is dead. Hearing this, Duan Wui became increasingly flustered. His junior brother had already died. Did they come from the headquarters of the Fengshuan stronghold just now? They were cultivators from the Xuanian sect. Were they not afraid of revenge? At this moment, Duan Wui's heart was filled with fear. These guys even dared to kill his junior brother. In that case, there was no way they would let him go. Elder Yi Zan, I'm Elder Li's personal disciple. I still have his warrant with me. Duan Wui immediately panicked. He quickly took out his master's warrant, hoping that the other party would spare his life for the sake of his master. However, Yi Zan ignored him. Seeing this, Duan Wui fell into complete despair. It was obvious that Yi Zan wanted to kill him. Yi Zan, I'm a personal disciple of the Xuanian sect. If you kill me, it will definitely cause a war between our two sects. Can you bear such a heavy responsibility? Duan Wui threatened Yi Zan out of desperation. Our Xuanian sect is the second-ranked sect. Your Qingyun sect can't afford to mess with us. If you really kill me, my master will not let you off. When that happens, the Qingyun sect will be buried with you. Seeing that Yi Zan was still acting indifferently, Duan Wui suddenly became hysterical. His face was full of madness. I don't want to die. In the end, his fear of death overcame the anger in his heart. Duan Wei was like a dog, kneeling on the ground and begging Yizan for mercy. Haha, do you think the death of a mere personal disciple like you will really cause a war between our sects? You think too highly of yourself. Yizan looked at Duan Wei indifferently. He then reached out and gently made a grabbing motion. A powerful invisible force immediately grabbed Duan Wei's neck and lifted him up. Elder Yizan, I'm begging you. Let me go. This was all my master's doing, it's all my master's doing. Oh right, don't core formation state cultivators like you yearn for the power of chi and blood essence. I have bloodstones on me. As long as you let me go, I'll give you the bloodstones. And I can even take you to the sect's senior and junior brothers and sisters. They also have bloodstones with them. As long as you let me go, I'll tell you where they are. Duan Wei shouted with a fearful expression. Compared to his own life, dignity was worth nothing. He would readily trade the lives of his fellow disciples, and even his master, for his own. As long as he could survive, all of this was not a problem. In any case, when he returned to the sect, he could spin a different story. At that time, Yizan would face the wrath of the entire Xuanian sect. A few days ago, I killed a cultivator of the Xuanian sect in the mountain range. His appearance was similar to yours. You two are probably brothers, right? Yizan looked at Duan Wei, who was being choked in midair, and could not help but reveal a wry smile. Buzz. Upon hearing this, Duan Wei's mind felt like it had been struck by a thunderbolt. Wu Jia, you actually killed my brother. Yizan, I won't let you off. Duan Wei screamed crazily, his eyes full of hatred. Seeing this, a sneer hung on the corners of Yizan's mouth. The reason he told Duan Wei about this was to completely infuriate him and to reveal his true colors. Would Yizan let him live? Impossible. Yizan, you will definitely suffer the revenge of the Xuanian sect. You and the Qingyan sect will be buried with my brother. Duan Wei revealed a crazed expression and roared hysterically. However, in the face of absolute strength, all resistance was futile. All right, enough of your nonsense. It's time for you two brothers to be reunited. Don't worry, I will send your beloved master and your whole sect down to join you very soon. Yizan said indifferently, after which he activated the golden core power in his body. Activated the golden core power in his body. Activated the